Welcome back to Eclectic Soundtrax, everybody, with Skunk and Vic as your hosts. Today we have another longtime friend of mine, Italo Samano. Did I say Samano right? Samano. And so when I kind of do it jokingly, but if I say like Italo, is that kind of like, do you do, and obviously not like that, but do you have like, is it, it's not just like, this is my buddy Italo. How do you say it?
No, it's Italo. You said it right.
Italo. Okay, I do say it right. Well, and that's actually Italian, right?
Originally, I think it kind of is. Yeah, but although most Italos are either Spanish or like Latin American.
Okay, for some reason, I guess maybe you have some Italian heritage as well, but or I'm just way off base with that.
My grandparents got married at the Vatican, and that's about
it. Oh, well, you're totally Italian. No, well, you're from Mexico City, or you're from Mexico, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at least I got that right. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, we've known each other for Jesus Christ, fucking 20, 30, I don't know, long ass time. And met in San Antonio in 90 something, maybe. Yeah, I guess been since the 90s.
Yeah. Before we graduated, so like 1995.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Anyway, so yeah, Eclectic Soundtrax, thanks for doing the podcast, coming on and talking to us. We'll talk about music, we'll talk about all kinds of things. And one thing that made me think of you was that you are known for your eclectic musical taste, And I actually wore a Soundgarden shirt. You can't really see it, I guess, but
yeah.
I wore. Yeah, because I know you're a huge Soundgarden fan. I mean, as am I, and I'm sure Vic too. And but you're one of those guys that was always like. I mean, I always like people used to give me shit for, and they still do, and I'm sure you will. But Mr. Bungle and some of the crazy shit that I listen to that I still love. But you're the kind of guy that you would listen to Soundgarden or some rock stuff, and then you listen to all these Latin bands that you'd listen to, and then you'd be like, oh, and now I'm listening to Master P, and now I'm listening to this electronic dance thing, and now I'm listening to Kingston Trio, and it was just all over the fucking place.
Natasha, remember her, the Egyptian singer?
Oh, dude, yes. Nobody knows who Natasha Atlas is, at least that I've come across in this country. But I love, ever since you introduced me to that was way old school when the internet first started happening in terms of like downloading when illegal, when the music industry got ruined, basically. And Napster had happened, and there was this site called Morpheus. I think you probably turned me on to it. You were a pirate, taking everyone's shit for free, you bastard. But yeah, Natasha Atlas, I downloaded a bunch of her stuff. I've got an old CD of it somewhere. It was really cool. Lebanese chick, kind of, with the ethnic, stylings of that culture, I suppose, with those, we would dub it as a sort of a Middle Eastern sound, but with like kind of electronic pop sort of, synth pop. It was very, very cool stuff. Really good stuff. Yeah, that was a good find. So how did you come across that stuff? What led you to, I mean, everyone has musical taste and enjoys music for the most part, but a love of music, and just where did these like broad, eclectic sort of tastes come from, you think?
As soon as the internet came out, well, part of it is like I grew up listening to mariachi music and sort of a big band Mexican music, which is what my grandparents listened to all the time, and my parents to some extent. And my mom, she's American, so she listened to like Heart and sort of the pop rock bands, who am I thinking of? Landslide, Fleetwood Mac, that kind of stuff. So I always had like a mix growing up of different shit that I listened to. And then once the internet came out, I was just like, I spent a lot of time on YouTube. I would just put in like French rock bands, and I would spend like 4 hours listening to different French rock bands. So that when I went to France, I knew all their bands, and they're like, and I'm like, do you have Mat Matan? And they're like, how do you know Mat Matan? I'm like, because I'm weird. That's why.
Yeah. I think you probably inspired me in that way, and it was really cool because that had never been something. Generations now don't know this, but prior to that generation, that we were sort of the generation that experienced that huge, forever shift, the internet, and the web, and like discovering all that for the first time. Before then, you just bought albums, you heard about things, whatever, as advertised, what your buddies were listening to. And all of a sudden, you could just go get anything. And I mean, I downloaded just hours and hours and hours of TV themes and cartoon themes and movie themes and bands that I would never listen to in a million years, or probably haven't since, but just because. And I was like, well, I fucking check this out. But you took it a step further. I was kind of listening to a lot of stuff I probably heard of but would never buy or hadn't really heard. But you're just like you said, let me go listen to a bunch of random French shit, and stuff in different languages and Korean, I mean, I can't tell me how many times you sent me Korean pop links. I mean, you were ahead of your time. Before that, Psy or whatever the fuck his name is had like 75 billion hits with that fucking whatever that. What is that goddamn song called?
Gangnam Style, yeah.
Yeah, and then someone sent me a link of another one of his songs, and it had like 1 billion something. I was like, this is like the most famous fucking dude in the world.
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause I was like, they have some catchy shit over there. They really got it down to a science. It's creepy.
Yeah, I think that probably makes sense. It's like you make music this way or you die, you know? Well, they're not North Korea. That was very racist sounding of me. Like, sorry, South Korea. Yeah, North Korea, you definitely probably die if you don't do the appropriate music. Oh, by the way, do you go by Damon or Italo?
Usually Italo or
Okay. Or Poppy.
Professor Samano.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that. I like that.
Oh, dude, like talking about music. Like now that I'm married to a Vietnamese woman, I listen, and I don't really like it, but there's this kind of Vietnamese music called bolero, which is traditional Vietnamese music, and I have to hear that shit all the time.
What? Try to describe it. Try to describe that to us.
What it's almost so. One of the things about traditional Asian music, I've kind of looked it up. It's like you can't tell where it's going to go. You know what I mean? Like Western music tends to operate in scales, and you know where you have an intrinsic feel of where the notes are going and the timing is going. And in Asian music, traditional Asian music, there's none of that. It's just like all over the fucking place.
Really?
It's basically the Vietnamese version of skeet, 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 skeet.
It's exactly. It had that total crunk and what do you call it? Crunk influence? Crunk. I recently watched the Damon. I feel like you would appreciate this. The Hip Hop Evolution on Netflix. You ought to check that out. It's a cool docu. Yeah, it's a really cool docuseries, man. It takes you through the origins in the 70s and the early.
Yeah, it goes from like the mid 70s and then just stops in 1995 and stays there.
Yeah, well, I had that attitude too, and I mean, I still do to a certain extent. There's definitely some stuff that I wasn't as familiar with, and maybe dismissed. That I was like, oh, like this person kind of surprised me a bit. I mean, there's definitely some stuff that I'm like, this is, what happens all the time though. It's the sort of I'll just use this cliche analogy, the Nickelback, syndrome, where someone gets huge fame and all that, and then they're just. I mean, I don't know what the fuck the deal is with rap nowadays and face tattoos. It's like you gotta have face tattoos to be relevant in a grill and all this bullshit. And so I think immediately look at someone and go, look at this fucking douchebag, but they might actually be a great rapper, And I didn't know. I mean, in terms of like Jay-Z or something, you hear some stuff and some poppy stuff, and you're like, whatever. But then you hear like old stuff where you like freestyles, and you're like, holy fucking shit, no wonder, So I mean, a lot of times there's like really talented people behind things. They just go mainstream and it gets fucking lame. And I don't know enough of these guys' catalog to really speak,
You should
intelligently on the subject, but I think that happens a lot with any kind of music.
African hip hop, man.
Dude, I've been listening to Latin hip hop, and I can't tell you the names of anything, but there's some just South American Brazil music and stuff that I kind of got down this little rabbit hole of that stuff, and it was awesome, man. It's just really, really cool stuff.
Is it like Calle 13?
Fuck if I know. I don't know the names. I just like it. Just like let YouTube roll, and then I just like bookmark shit that I like.
Yeah, I want to hear.
There was this one band that they had this fucking jam. Well, it's kind of rock too. You know what they're called? Like Sabotage, I think. And I could be wrong, but it's kind of like rock and hip hop. And there was this song, I was like fucking rocking out to it over and over and over. I was like, this is so badass. And then I didn't even realize it was a fucking Public Enemy cover, and it was like awesome. Yeah, like really good.
I made my baby listen to Megadeth the other day.
What's that?
I made my baby listen to Megadeth. I'm like, you get
good man, good father. The last podcast we did, we were having this big. I've had a long running rival with a longtime friend of mine about Megadeth, and he would give me shit about liking Megadeth, and I'd give him shit about liking Rush, because both those singers have arguably annoying voices if you're not acclimated with it and don't like the band and the music. But
I think Megadeth's voice fits the music though.
Yeah, that is a good point. Like Megadeth,
Rush still grinds on me, but like Megadeth, like Mustaine's voice feels like that's where it belongs.
Yeah, no, I agree. And because of course, I admit the first time I heard Megadeth too, I was like, and then you get used to it and you start to really like it. And it even had this like pop sensibility, especially for a lot of that 90s and early 2000 albums, where I think he's a master of melody, and has some really great catchy hooky tunes.
He's got good guitar hooks.
Yeah, guitar hooks, lyric, melody, vocal hooks as well. Like really, really good, accessible stuff. Once you kind of get past the uniqueness of a voice, which often is what makes a singer ultimately kind of great. Though a lot of times you look at a lot of guys like Tom Petty or Bob Dylan or Roger Waters, and those are not the kind of voices you would necessarily be like, "Whoa, what an amazing singer," But you learn to love it, and it becomes it's that's one thing about voice more than any other instrument is it's very signature to the person. You can't really fake your fucking voice. You can sort of learn to emulate guitar. I mean, God knows I've tried it, and I'm like, I guess it's just what I sound like. Oh well, you just sort of have to like deal with your voice and use it as you can. I mean, you can cultivate it and get better, but that's such a unique thing. So, and when you resonate with an artist, lyrics and content and vibe, that you sort of learn to love their voice for the most part. What album or what songs or what was the what Megadeth was it? Do you remember?
Hangar 18.
Oh, hell yeah. Good man. Good father. Approved.
My wife's just like, what the fuck?
I love the way she's going from, what do you call it? Bolero? Just like this, I don't know what you would call it. It wasn't offensive to me. It was cool. But it's definitely not Hangar 18. It's a very different vibe. It's good. You're getting your child very acclimated with a wide variety of.
I want her to be a drummer, man. That would be awesome.
We've talked to a few guests already that have had daughters that drum. Yeah. So it's totally a thing that happens in the world.
Hell yeah. I was fired. There's that little Japanese girl. I don't know if you've seen her. Her name's Mayoka or something like that. She's like 10 and she does all these metal drumming. It's like super cute and super awesome at the same time.
It's super cute and super awesome and also super discouraging because you're just like, well, I suck. Here's a 4-year-old playing Beethoven. Fuck me. I know, it's nuts, man. These YouTube videos nowadays, we live in such a bizarre time where it's just like, look, there's a neck and neck YouTube videos, each with 200 million plays. One is of a 4-year-old virtuoso Asian kid playing 2 guitars and piano with his feet. And another one's like of a guy falling off a wall and shitting his pants. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's so bizarre, man.
I was joking with my student that the internet is, with all that's possible with the internet, musically and information and all this knowledge, and it's like 80% porn and videos of cats.
Yeah, it's mostly just nonsense that gives you a quick quick laugh, or something you get off to and then feel bad about yourself afterwards. But yeah, that's 80% of the internet. I was like this. There was this Greg Giraldo joke where he was just like, it's disturbing to me that I teach my kids the alphabet on the same machine that I masturbate to.
Yeah. But that's how people are. That's where the proverbial rubber hits the road.
Man, back in the day when you were downloading tons of French pop music, and I was listening to trying to get my hands on cartoon and TV themes. There was also porn back then. First of all, there was the dial-up era where you couldn't even just.
So you go back before that, before the internet, porn was like a treasure hunt. It was like your friends.
Oh yeah. The kids nowadays will never know. You had to walk into a 7-Eleven in the middle of the night, turning red, asking for a hustler.
You had to work for it back then.
Yeah, and then the original dial-up, it's just like you're sitting there going like, okay, I've got a 15-minute window to download a tit,
Yeah. A picture.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, exactly. A picture of I see the top of the nipple.
And then if you didn't like that pose, you're like, back.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll explore tomorrow. That's all the time I have for porn today. I got one tit in. I'll download the other tit tomorrow.
And now you can, like, any 9-year-old can get on there and in 5 minutes find people.
Oh man! I remember like the first time I saw like a Penthouse, and when I was probably like maybe a freshman in high school or 8th grade or something, and I was just like, whoa, maybe, I don't know, somewhere around there. Maybe I'd seen something before, but I remember the first time it was just like, oh my God. Now, like you said, yeah, you could be like 3 years old and be like, "Mommy, what's this?" And it's like someone fisting an asshole. It's just like, Jesus, man, it's all just there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so drums, asshole fisting. What else are we going to talk about? Hangar 18. You are a history professor. Do you talk about these things with your classes, or?
Sometimes, yeah. That's probably why they like me as a professor.
All right, everybody, close your books. Today, 1800s fisting.
My favorite compliment I got, I still remember this. It was like my second year of teaching, and one of my students, she tells me, sir, you're my favorite professor. And I was like, thank you. Why? And she goes, because you told us day one that you thought we were stupid.
Oh, my dad will just so love you for that. That's like, yeah, he's been saying that for you. These are kids, college bottom feeders. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I imagine there are some people like going into college with just that really have been failed by the public school system for sure.
Well, they're so coddled, and
Yeah.
I just talk to them like they're people. I go, look, I'm not offended by the things you say because I know you don't know anything. Like, you're not that important, so why would I get offended? I don't care about you.
Yeah, you pull that Robin Williams shit that he pulled on Matt Damon and Good Will Hunting. It says, and remember, you don't know shit. You're just a kid. And there's a truth to that, and it's like you can never. I don't think you never know that. It's like that's life experience. You have to sort of. There's a combination of course, book education and all that, but also life experience education. And that's why someone that's 40 is going to know a lot more most of the times than someone that's fucking 20 or 18.
And the fact that these kids today are fucking way lamer than we used to be. I mean, we got into a lot more trouble than they get into now. Now they just text shit back and forth and get offended. I mean, they're fucking gay.
Yeah. Seriously, like we were just like, hey, where can we get some booze and go? Yeah, what kind of trouble are we gonna get in tonight? Let's go find, like, that's the thing. Like, let's go get some new music and fucking get wasted and listen to music. And not that that's like some admirable quality, but that's what you used to do as a teenager. Now you're right. It's like now it's like, hey, like, what are we gonna like be offended about today?
Yeah, I mean, there's like
my college professor offended me.
Say that, you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? So fucking.
Shut up, you little crybaby bitch.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
I like it. I like this. We need more teachers like you. From what I don't even know much about you yet, but I mean, I do, but I mean, we haven't talked about your teaching much, but I would already immediately hire you. I'd be like, cool, this guy's not going to coddle a bunch of little shitheads.
Like, I'll give them this feel like, none of you would be here if it wasn't in college, if it wasn't going to help you get a job, right? Nobody's here for the knowledge. Well, let me tell you for real, the first thing you're not going to have a career. You're going to have a job, and you're probably not going to like your job. And that's just how it is, all right? First of all, don't be thinking you're somebody. You're nobody.
I like this. This is good, man. Be real with these motherfuckers. Yeah.
Real talk.
To know, you weird little bastards, is to talk to people. Because if you're weird like y'all are, no one's going to hire you because nobody wants to work with your weird ass. Like, make noises at me with your fucking face holes. That's interacting. I'm like, for you guys, like, no girl is gonna touch you in your no-no place if you can't fucking talk to girls.
I mean, dude, it's so true. Like, I went through, I was a virgin until I was like 35 years old, and I mean, this used to be and I still am afraid of women, but like, seriously, it's like it's not that big of a deal half the time. Just like say what's on your fucking mind. It's no big deal. Like, I think a lot of people are like that. You're so. And especially, it makes a lot of sense. We were talking about this last time, just in today's landscape and culture. It's very, there's a lot of PC. There's a lot of like, well, I don't know how I feel, or should I say this or this and that? And it's just like, well, don't be a fucking asshole, but Jesus, man, like, just be a human being and just talk to somebody, and don't be afraid of everything. It's like the whole point of life is to get out there and experience things and meet people and try things, and like that is what makes you a real life educated person and someone that actually has value in their opinions. Is that there's nothing worse than some fuck that's never done anything trying to tell you how to live your life. It's like, that's one thing about you too. Like, I think that's really cool in terms of you being a professor. I had a sociology professor. It was one of the best classes I ever took. The guy first day was just like, shut your books, read them on your own time if you want. We're not going to do that. He just told us stories. He just enlightened us about the ways of the world, and that we were not the center of the universe in our dumb little town and our dumb little conditioning values. We're not the center of everything, despite what we may have been trained to believe. And this motherfucker put his money where his mouth is. He had been all over the world. He had, eaten bugs and studied all these different religions and been in that to me, like there is value in that. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to listen. You're not just going like, and now turn to chapter 4. You know, it's like, and same with you, man. You've traveled around a lot. I don't know how long it's been now. It seems there's been several years. Every year you started taking summer vacations. You've been to Japan, obviously Vietnam. Tell us about some of the places you've been, some favorites, some about your travels. Some.
I really liked Ukraine.
Oh wow, okay.
Ukraine is fucking gangster, but that's something everybody should experience, man. You should go to a place that is full of fucking hardcore white people, where just like it's all 99.9% white people, and they are sketchy as fuck. Like that's an experience everybody needs, because you come back to America, like, where? Oh, thank God, brown people. All right. Ukrainians, like Eastern Europeans, are their own kind of sketchy. But Ukraine was a trip, man, because it's fucked. Like Ukraine is totally fucked. I mean, it's like I come from Mexico, and I'm telling you, Ukraine is fucked.
Oh, that's hardcore, man. I've heard some stories about Mexico from people from Mexico, and just being like, I mean, you know, I think it's no secret, like no place is perfect, but there's some fucked up shit and some cartel stuff and all that. And for you to go like, no, I've been to Mexico, I've lived in Mexico, and the Ukraine is fucked. That's like, man, the Ukraine must be pretty fucked.
They're poor. It's so like I went to Ukraine. I was supposed to meet my Russian friend. My friend Svetlana was going to meet me in Kiev, and she ended up having to cancel like 2 weeks before. And she's like, "Hey, I'll hook you up with one of my friends there. Ukrainian, he'll set you up." And I was like, "Cool, all right. Well, I'm flying in a week anyway." So I fly into Kiev, and this dude sends his uncle to go pick me up at the airport in Kiev, and the airport in Kiev is like almost like 45 minutes away from town. And this dude shows up with a little sign that says Italo, doesn't speak a fucking lick of English, right? And I've taken like one semester of Russian, so I can barely communicate with this dude. But he takes me back, and he's like shows me to this hotel that this guy booked for me. And this is this old fucking Soviet hotel in fucking the ghetto of Kiev, right? Because they're like, oh, it's cheap. And I'm like, dude, I'm it's a $4 a night room. Like, I don't need it to be that cheap. I'm not trying to save money.
Give me the real Ukrainian experience here.
They didn't even have fucking streetlights on this street. No streetlights. It's just so. And I get there in like the evening, and I gotta go walk and buy cigarettes. I'm like, this is the sketchiest fucking place, right? The fucking ATM, the maximum on this ATM is about $20 that you can pull out. That's fucking sketchy. But like, I wait at this old Soviet hotel that's like fucked up. And then you get these like Soviet elevators, which I noticed is a thing. Old Soviet elevators are like super fast, like insanely fast, and they make noise the whole way. And they're just like
people are always trying to get the fuck out of wherever they're at real quick.
This thing that happened to me over and over in Ukraine was so like the very first time at the hotel, somebody gets on the elevator with me, and we go up to like the 4th floor, and it's making noise, and the dude next to me, this Russian dude, just kind of goes, Sovietsky lift. Ugh. Right? Sovietsky lift being Soviet elevator. And for the rest of the time, something was fucked up, they just go, Sovietsky auto. Sovietsky car. Sovietsky lift.
That's just that. Yeah, that's their excuse for everything. Like when a submarine, you know, nuclear fucking leak or something. Well, you know.
Yeah, like it's fucking.
Oh well.
Anyway, like this guy Alexander finally shows up at like 10 o'clock at night, and he's like, "Hey, we go downtown drinking?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." He's like, "Hey, do you like smoke weed?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, hell yeah. Can I roll some?" And he like rolls up 5 joints of really terrible weed, and I'm kind of like asking him, "So, are we gonna smoke these here?" He's like, "No, we walk and smoke them." I'm like, "Is it cool to smoke weed here?" And he's like, "No. If cops come, we run." I'm like, "Oh, all right."
Like for real, like they'll beat the shit out of us and
so we're
stomp
walking
our heads in.
So like at 10:30 at night, we set out walking towards downtown. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess downtown's not far, and we're just smoking joints, walking down with no fucking street lights. And we're walking through like bums and sketchy hookers, and not like the nice Ukrainian hookers, like the fucking 50-year-old sketchy hookers that are just coming up and like, but they're like, I don't want a blowjob from you.
Sounds appealing.
Oh yeah, but we end up walking for 3 hours, and I'm like, wow, God damn it, he really? And the place he took me to was a fucking nudie bar.
Right. Were the women there under the age of 50 or?
Now the women here, so we go into this. We finally make it downtown Kiev, and I forget the name of the club we went to, but these big Russian mafia-looking guys at the door. We get in, and no shit, these were the hottest fucking girls I've ever seen in a nudie bar.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because there's a whole Russian mail order ride, and they've got these like exotic, known for beautiful women apparently, right? So it held true at least in the good part of town, or the good part of town, the good.
Yeah. Ukraine, Kiev was the hottest girls I've ever seen anywhere, and it was literally like every 30 minutes walking around there, you were like, "That's the hottest fucking girl I've ever seen." And then
how loose are they with their strip club rules there?
They're pretty tight. But it's one of those places where if you got money, you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
Although Ukraine does have like the highest HIV rate by miles in Europe.
Wow.
So Ukraine is a sex tourism place, and all the girls there know that. So when you're a foreigner there, they just assume that's what you're there for, and like they won't talk to you. I had to make friends with Ukrainian dudes to actually meet Ukrainian girls, and then they were really cool. They were super cool. But otherwise, like talking to Ukrainian girls on the street,
they just want to try to fuck you for money.
No, some of them will. Yeah, they'll try. They'll try to get money out of you. But most of the decent ones will just not have anything to do with you. They just assume you're a sex tourist.
Oh, I see. Okay, so not necessarily that they're snobby bitches. They're just like, he just wants to fuck me, so I'm going to run the other way.
They're not wrong. You'll meet a lot of fucking
yeah, no, it's
guys, Swedish guys, or like
that happened to. That happened to me when I went to Jamaica, man, and it was like the only time that's really ever happened to me that I can recall. Like clearly must have been a prostitute came up to me, and this like gorgeous black girl was like taking me by the arm, like essentially dragging me away somewhere. We're on this like beach party, and I'm like, part of me is just like, wow, this is cool, but I'm also like, this can't. There's no way this chick's just like, hi, like let's just be friends. I'm like, no, I think I know where this is going. Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, you're like,
I'm cool with my red stripe and barrage of joints flying my way. Man, all those fucking stereotypes there were so true. It was like dudes rolling up on canoes just like, hey, man, like, oh, holy shit, this guy's going to sell me weed right now. Okay.
Like, hell yeah.
Then reggae's playing. Oh, my God, it's the stereotypes ring true. So Ukraine, like the place where you can go, girls run the other way because you think they want to fuck them. The 50-year-olds want to fuck you. You'll get your head stomped in if you smoke a joint. This is your favorite place you've ever been in the entire world?
No, not my favorite, but it was a lot of fun because nobody like. I actually ended up smoking weed with a Ukrainian cop. I went to this town called Sumy, which is like it's a tiny little town on the Russian border. I had a friend that I met online there, and I just wanted to check out little small town Ukraine, and it ended up being pretty cool. I just partied with these dudes for like a week, and like. I met all their like girlfriends and wives and all stuff, and they fucking sent me home. I actually ended up renting an apartment and throwing a party in this town.
Oh, wow, cool.
Like 30 people. And so I asked my friend, I was like, hey, because I was just sleeping in his guest room, right? And kind of like, so he rented like the penthouse of his apartment complex because he had an IT job where he gets paid in euros, and he made 400 euros a month, which is about $400 a month. And that was enough for him to rent the penthouse of his apartment building. But I asked him, like, hey, what's the cheapest, like, badass, like, what's the most badass hotel? And we looked, and we found this apartment for rent that had a fucking jacuzzi in it and everything. And it was $27 a night.
So it's like dirt. So it's like dirt cheap there, huh? Is that kind of wow?
I rented this place out, and I was like, tell all your friends we're fucking partying in this apartment. We got like 20 people up in there. And I made tacos for everybody. Went to the supermarket. And
man, were they fucking super stoked to get like authentic? I mean, not even American phony tacos, but like real deal fucking Mexican food.
Actually, this one Ukrainian girl, she's like, "This is the best food I ever had made by man."
That sounds like reverse sexism.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I take offense to that. I'm a chef.
And like while I was there, I was like, "Hey man, is there a bride agency here?" And they're like, "Yeah, let's look." And I found a bride agency, and I went on a date with a bride, or with a Ukrainian girl on a bride.
You marry me now. You marry me now. We go to U.S. and I leave you.
She was just out for a free meal, but it was like we went to this restaurant. I took a translator with me. They bring a translator. And me and this translator and this girl.
As if a date can't be awkward enough as is.
So we went to their brand new restaurants, like this barbecue place. It was really good. and I paid for myself and the two girls and like a round of beers, and it was less than $10 for all of us. I was like, fucking drink up.
All right. Well, I know goddamn well, like, it sounds kind of like you said, a sketchy, crazy place, but I feel like I kind of want to go to the Ukraine just because it's so cheap. Like, let's just go. Let's just go get.
It's
like,
fucked
fuck
up.
going to Vegas and blowing your life savings for a little romp. Like, just go to the Ukraine and be like, man, I went to Ukraine. I got fucked up like every night, did crazy shit I can't talk about for a week. Cost me $25.
All I had to do was get a fucking shot in my ass when I get home, so the pee stops burning.
Was this and forgive me for asking? Now, did you have an intent? Was there an intent behind the Ukraine trip in terms of Russian mail order brides?
It was something I went. I was like, I'm gonna check that out when I go.
I do remember back in the day you had, it was mentioned a few times, and again, like there's no secret. We've seen there are beautiful women in that part of the world.
Like these girls are smoking hot, and you're like, what the fuck, man? I got to like you can't help but be curious, and it's all true. They're smoking hot. Like so my tip, if you go to Ukraine,
is the accent sexy?
Fuck yes, it is. Fuck yes.
Yeah.
It's super sexy. You don't understand the hotness of the girl. There's only one other place that compares to Kiev, and that would be Japan, and really specifically a certain region of Osaka where I've seen a higher concentration of just constant hotties. Like Kiev is off the chain. It is nuts, dude. It's nuts. Like,
cool. I think we're taking notes for our when we have a remote podcast. We start traveling the world with Kiev and
go to Kiev.
$20 limit on ATMs.
Well, apparently you can throw a fucking total pimp ass party on $20 though.
Yeah.
If you want to meet like a decent Ukrainian girl, the trick is to actually make friends with Ukrainian dudes, and they'll introduce you, because they're not going to give you the time.
The girls don't trust. Yeah, they just think, well, it makes sense. They're just like, these foreigners are just here to fuck us.
I hit on girls on the street in every country I go to, or at least I try to. In Ukraine was the only time, like, I literally jumped in front of this girl, and she literally just went "Nyet, nyet," and walked around me.
Yeah. That happened to me in England. It's funny how little things happen when you talk about, individualism and not judging people in groups and everything, but we're all, sometimes guilty. Like, it happened to me in England many years ago, and it just made me so mad. I was like, in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, English girls are fucking snobs, bitches. And I'm like, literally, because like one girl was a total cunt. But I was like, literally, like, I walked up to this girl, and this is like me, like I said, I was just always like super shy, like, couldn't, just not good at talking to girls and sealing the deal and asking girls out and stuff like that. And there was this like unbelievably gorgeous girl in this pub, and we would always like make the rounds, and I was just like, God damn it, I can't stand to like live with myself. I don't say something to this girl. And like a dork. I mean, she's the little princess, all just perfect, that whole thing. So I'm sure she wasn't like thrilled with like Joe long-haired Pantera shirt guy coming up to her and being like, I think you're real hot, but I was just like paying her a compliment, and all she did was like, how hard is it to just be like, oh, thank you so much, and then like tell me to fuck off? But like, oh, well, I've got a boyfriend. How fucking hard is that? No, this bitch looks over at her friend, and they both start giggling. I'm like, fuck you, man. Like, damn, dude. Like, the thing is like, I could give that a pass in the Ukraine too, because if I'm somewhere like that where you have a $20 limit on a fucking ATM, and 50-year-olds are running out of the dark corners trying to fuck you, and some chick just runs away, and yeah, I get it. But I'm in like a place, for lack of a better word, a civilized place where we're all speaking the same language. Like, you can at least acknowledge my existence, you fucking bitch. Okay, I'm done with that. Move on.
I remember this story.
I was mad.
Like to clean up or something like that.
What?
Wasn't there an English girl that said, hey, you need to clean yourself up, like get a shave and a haircut or something like that?
Probably. Well, on the flip side of that, and I didn't know how to talk to women, I guess, but like there was a few times, not really being hit on, but a few women were curious, I think, because what was so interesting was, you've probably experienced this too, traveling like worldwide, is like, you're from the United States, and they're like, that's cool. But when you're from Texas, they're like, oh, you're from Texas. Like, they thought I was like this fucking cowboy that was going to pull guns out of my holsters and ride off in the sunset on a fucking horse and shit. And they were fascinated, some of them,
Yeah, they want to meet some. I will say, so the Ukrainians could give a shit where you're from. Generally, like post-Soviet countries give a shit about everything. Asia, absolutely. Like, if you want to this is my tip for getting laid in Asia. Go stand on the corner. Just go to any bar and just stand there and be white. Just stand there.
Hey, that sounds like the place I should have gone 30 years ago.
If you can't be white, be black. It's just as good.
Yeah, I just hold a sign. It's I'm from America. Oh, you want to fuck? That was a terrible impersonation of whatever it was, but
there's girls that are just out for foreign dick.
Yeah, God bless them.
Right?
I think everyone should get it. It's like the spice. Everyone should go around the world and experience different dicks, and it's the spice of life. Not all dicks are the same. We need to try them all out. A lot of cock talk again. When we're back with cock talk. I mean, Eclectic Soundtrax.
Yeah, definitely traveling is the way to go. So yeah, Japan is still my favorite, right?
Well, you've been there many times. You've been to Japan more than any other place, I would think, by far. You've been several trips there, and I regret. I used to have a friend that lived over there for. Remember, we were talking about him the other day, Big Brad, back when Vic, the harmonica player and stuff. Such a good guy, and he worked over there, and he was always like, "Man, they're so cool over here." And he was a blues guy. We always, and he's like, "Come over here, they'll love you. We'll just play, just blue." There's these little bars that play blues and American music, and they just eat it up and love it and everything. And I just never made it happen, unfortunately. But and then you've had those trips where I've a few times been like, yeah, I should really go, and shit, man, it just sounds so fucking cool. I really do want to visit Japan someday for sure.
Oh, you should, man. Tokyo is a silly place, man. It's the silliest place on earth. Maybe.
It's definitely on my list.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. Yeah, we should. Okay, man, let's do this. We're gonna do keep us posted, because I know you take action on this.
Yeah, I'm planning to go to Japan again in 2022.
That's probably good. Like give this whole virus thing some time, and you're a new father, so you got to tend to that stuff. You got to get your daughter hooked on Megadeth and whatnot.
You got to take the baby to go see her family in Vietnam, and so I'll just swing over to Japan for like a week or something, and then go back to Vietnam.
Hey, you been to Thailand as well?
I haven't gone over to Thailand. I've been.
How many times have you been to Vietnam? Did you just go over there one time and meet who became your wife, or have you been there multiple times?
I've been there 4 times.
Why Vietnam? What made you want to go there?
So that trip, I just wanted to go to Vietnam. That trip, so it was a good trip. That's the one where I went to it. So it was my Asia trip year, and I had wanted to do Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and then Japan, and then maybe Korea, Japan. But as it happened, my sister had coordinated this trip, and my mom really wanted to go to Europe. So we were like, okay, well, we'll go to Europe. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just do both, right? And then like a week before, my sister ended up backing out, and she canceled. So I went with my mom to Barcelona, because she always wanted to go to Barcelona, and I'd just been the year before. So Barcelona's a really cool town too. But we hung out in Barcelona, and then I took her to Paris. We hung around in Paris, and then she went home, and then I went off to go hang out with my buddy in Germany, Berlin. And that was a super fun trip too, actually. We smoked a joint behind the Reichstag, man. Just fucking fun, man. Didn't even realize it. Germans are fun people. But after that,
I have heard a lot of good things about Germany. Yeah, it sounds like a very fun place to visit, at least.
Berlin is a pretty cool town. And everybody gets high, like, in public, and it's not legal, and nobody cares.
And porn, they've all been. Europe's been so ahead of us for so many years. Like, I mean, even England, but like, just they're like, oh, we're having dinner and watching porn, whatever,
I didn't notice that, but.
Oh yeah, and hey, so I've been informed by a German guy that I knew who loved porn.
That guy.
We're going to talk about this when guys on the show for sure. Yeah, this is great stories, but like, dude, I've heard they have these little, like, the toilets are kind of weird over there.
In Japan or in Germany?
In Germany. I don't know anything about Japanese. Now, I've heard different things, but sometimes people tell you fucked up shit that's not true. So some sources, not necessarily sources I would rely on, say that, like, there's just places in Japan where you just shit on the road. There's like holes, just shit and piss and a hole in the side of the road. Or, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but there's some kind of funky little system there.
In Asia?
Oh, well, I mean Japan specifically, but maybe general Asian countries. I don't know.
So old school Japanese toilets, yeah, it's like this hole in the ground, but it's elevated. You stand on this thing, it's got places to put your feet, and it's a long, skinny toilet, and you basically squat over it and just fucking drop a deuce in there. and then you hit a little thing, and a little jet of water flushes it away. Now, I don't like that.
Not in public, like like when you say on the side of the road, like I mean, it's almost like a phone booth toilet, like porta potties.
Those bathrooms are old school, so you only really find it now when you're kind of traveling in rural areas.
I see.
But like in Tokyo, I've never seen one like that in Tokyo. The only places I've seen them.
And what about Germany?
Germany, I didn't notice anything weird about the toilets. They were just toilets. But I was in Berlin. I didn't really travel around.
I used to hear there was this weird shelf contraption that like I always had some weird visual in my head of what it actually was, like, which didn't make sense. Like, why am I not just like shitting down into the bowl? Like, well, why am I sitting on?
Are you sure it's not something you saw in a German movie?
a very specific. Yeah. Oh, it was just in that specific German film I watched. It was on one of my old dial-up films. That's an art film. Well, anyway, I've been misinformed. Damn it.
Like I said, if you go into rural Germany, who knows what you might
find. Yeah. So, anything?
Vietnam. So I went to Vietnam after that, and I just kind of met my girl through actually, I'd lined up a bunch of dates on a Vietnamese dating site before I went.
Interesting.
And she was actually the one I talked to the most, and the very first one I met, and then I just didn't meet any of the other ones because I was like, "You're fucking amazing."
You just crushed all of them. They were all like, "Oh, I've got a date with a white guy. I'm going to go to America," and you're like, "Yeah, fuck you." Stood them all up.
Asian girl with big boobs. I'm sold. Like I'm on board. You're like
all
a unicorn.
Dreams have been met. Yeah, I'm glad to see dreams come true, man. I'm happy for you. So obviously a lot of the Pacific Rim and Japan and Vietnam and countries nearby and European countries, it sounds like several of those. What about South America, Africa, any other continents?
Brazil. I've been to Brazil.
Did you ever go to Australia?
No, I never went to Australia. And it's not so like my thing is I don't really like traveling in the developed world that much because I feel like you've seen it. You know what I mean? Like it's not new in the way like Asia and other places are. Eastern Europe is still a little new, but like if you go to Germany, you kind of get how everything works. Spain, everything, Italy, France, it's all pretty much the same as here, except you walk around a lot more. There's better public transportation, and the language is a little different. But you're still drinking Coke and eating more or less the same shit. You go to Asia, and it's totally fucking different. You're like, what the fuck? It's like. So the culture shock is way different, and it's just more interesting. It's like
you can actually be in an American rock band in Asian countries and be successful. It's crazy.
Yeah.
We still like guitar.
So like a rock club, I went to a rock club in this area of Tokyo called Shinjuku. Like the second time I was there, I just kind of looked up like what's a rock bar around here, and I went there, and it was just like local kind of metal-y band, but the thing was like everybody was just sitting there quietly like
yeah, I've heard.
And then
really
the song
attention while listening. Bravo.
I'm like, nobody? All right.
Fuck yeah, there's that one Slayer fan. Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone else is like, we're trying to listen.
This is the chillest.
I don't even know what scale he was playing now. Damn it.
You're just like, what a fine performance, huh?
What was Brazil like?
Brazil is gangster too, man. Brazil is fucking gangster. Actually, Brazil is the most gangster place I've ever been.
What part of Brazil? Rio de Janeiro area? Or?
I went to Rio and I went to Sao Paulo. Rio is a giant fucking ghetto. It's like 20 million people, of which 18 million live in the ghetto, like shantytown ghettos. And the rest live on the beach, basically. And you go in like 10 blocks from the beach and you're in the ghetto. It's sketchy. Like I went and I got this taxi cab driver. I was like, hey man, I want to go to the City of God, right? Which is one of the big famous ghettos, barrios in Rio. And the dude's just like, why? It's like, I just want to check it out. I want to like, can you give me a tour? I want to see Maracanã, which is like the big stadium. And he's like, so he drove me around, and then he takes me to this shanty town, which is basically on the edge of City of God. And he's like, you want to see? And I'm like, yeah. And so he stops right there at the corner and he's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, just wait for me. I'm gonna get out and buy a soda and like smoke a cigarette. And like the whole time it's just sketchy, right? And there's actually like this, like it looks, I guess it was a poor Italian neighborhood, so there's a mix of like black people and Italians, and they all look like the 10-year-old wanted to rob you. It was just looking at you like those shoes look warm. Kind of like. And the taxi cab driver never got it. He kept the car running, just sat there in the cab looking at me like, the fuck are you doing, man? And I basically bought a drink and some chips and I smoked a cigarette and I was like, all right, that's enough. I'm going.
Well, he probably thought you were white. He's this stupid white tourist motherfucker.
Well, I was talking to him in Spanish so he could, and he didn't speak English. He didn't speak Spanish either. He kind of spoke a little bit of Spanish.
Yeah. So what's the crossover with Portuguese and Spanish? Like, how well can you sort of communicate with someone who speaks Portuguese?
Pretty well, actually. Turns out you can talk pretty well. Like you can get probably about 50% of what they're saying.
I referenced you on a show the other night. We had a guest from Brazil who's a fascinating guy. He's a huge Maiden fan, metal guy, tech dude's written all these books, Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, bodybuilder, really, really fascinating. And I started talking about some of the Brazilian hip hop and Latin stuff and this one band that I've loved, and I referenced you because I'm pretty sure you're the guy that said this to me. I was like, man, check this out. And I've been calling this band Oh Rappa, like a honky for years, and then I heard it was pronounced Hoppa. And they did a collaboration with Sepultura, so there's this like kind of reggae hip hop sort of verse sort of thing, and then the choruses are just this like real metal sort of riff, and it's like nobody fucks with America, and I've always loved that song. I just think it's so fucking badass. It's just cool, and I think I played it for you a long time ago, and you're like, you know, these lyrics are anti-American, right? And I was like, oh yeah, well, whatever.
There's a lot of it, but that's a good experience for you.
Are you do you still go to Mexico very often? I mean, you used to kind of go down there for the summers and stuff, right? Or you were every year seemingly, I think.
It's actually, this is the longest time I haven't been down to Mexico. It's been almost 2 years. Because I spent all my
family in Mexico, like grandparents, or do you have family down there still?
Yeah, well, my grandparents have since passed away. My cousins and my uncles are still down there. Like right now, my dad's about to go down. We're selling the house finally in Mexico City.
Oh, okay. Man, what's the population there now? Like 30 million or something or more?
It's hard to say. I think the metro area is about 30 million.
Crazy like huge, yeah.
It's fucking nuts.
Massive.
It's nuts.
It's also, I've heard the same thing about Mexico City. I mean, not that it's maybe 80, not that it's as ghetto in such a large degree, but like where you'll be in like a super rich area and then like a block away or right down the road, it's just like a shack. Like it's very mixed. Like there'd be extreme wealth right near extreme poverty kind of thing. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true kind of across Latin America.
Yeah.
The developing world in general. I mean, there's some really ritzy areas in Mexico City that will usually have like, private security that kind of patrols the area, and I mean you're like super safe because there's dudes with machine guns to make sure nothing bad goes down, kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's a weirder groove because in Latin America, like when you see people with machine guns, you generally feel safer. Right? You're like, it's the army. We're good. Like it's where we want to be. Whereas here, people get a little wigged out when they see that. They're like, what's going down?
Well, yeah, like right now, people are crying martial law, right? When you got guys coming around and scooping up protesters and whatnot. I mean, I don't know the dynamics of, to my knowledge, people peacefully protesting aren't getting scooped up off the street. It's more rioters and looters, but I'm not there. I'm not in those situations, but I'm sure there are people that are like, yay, these guys aren't terrorizing the city now. It comes from the perspective you're looking at it for sure.
It's the weird amount of like escalation that is happening for no reason, right? I don't know what Americans get so bent out of shape about sometimes. I don't know.
Well, our guest the other day said that, the guy from Brazil said, to me, it was living the American dream, and I was inspired by Arnold Schwarzenegger and Rocky and all these iconic American things, and for him, the bodybuilder, and coming here and living the American dream, and so thankful for it, and telling his kids to be thankful. And not to say, like, of course, no place is a perfect place. I always say the same thing. I mean, that's a ridiculous notion that utopia exists is absurd. But all things considered, there's been a lot of progress here, and it's still a very great, wealthy country, whatever overall, right? And so I think it's like a lot of times when you live here and you take a lot of things for granted, it's real easy to sort of just be like, yeah, man, fuck all this, fuck this country, and you're like, well, yeah, okay, go to Brazil, right? Go to the Ukraine, and then get back to me on that.
Yeah, I mean, you're very safe here. It's
for the most part.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like every place. If you go into, there's shitty places in every country, except maybe Japan.
And shit happens. It can happen anywhere, unfortunately. Yeah. What do you feel like? Is there any particular place that you think is like? I mean, I'm sure there's studies and statistics for this, but just really, really safe. Not too much. Yeah.
Japan has like 320 murders for the whole country.
Is that because they're like crazy hardcore on crime and they just cut your dick off if you fuck up, or what?
Not. It's a cult. This is the thing, right? Japan is just culture. It's straight culture because
love it.
Ethnically, you can say that the Vietnamese and the Japanese are technically both Asian, right? But the cultures are so radically different. This is also why East Asia is more fun. Like the difference between Vietnam and Japan is far greater than, say, the difference between the French and the Germans, right? I mean, they're like light years apart. So I mean, people will steal all sorts of shit in Vietnam, whereas in Japan, they just don't steal. And it's not the penalties. It's just they just don't do that. They're just fucking civilized. Dude, so let me tell you a story about police. I'll give you an idea that I think it was the second time I was in Japan. We were partying. We get back a little late because the train stopped running around midnight, and we caught a train that wouldn't take us all the way back to our part of town, but it was close. Right, it took us to Ueno. When we get off the train, I say we, it's me and a couple of Europeans. We get off the train, and there's this fucking older, like maybe late 50s Japanese dude, businessman in his work suit, and he is fucking wasted, right? And he literally just sits down, like on his ass, spread-legged, in the middle of the sidewalk, and is like belligerently yelling stuff and throwing up, right? And the cops, I guess somebody called the cops, they come out of a car and they go up to him, and I'm just like, I'm gonna watch this. See what happens. The cops go up to him. One of the cops is like patting him on the back and talking to him. The other cop goes out and stops a cab. And then they take this guy between the two cops, and they're saying, I don't know what they're saying to him, but they pick him up and take him to the cab. One of the cops takes out his wallet, shows that like his driver's license to the cab driver, and then pays the cab driver. They put the guy in the cab and send him home. And the whole time this guy's yelling at the cops. And I was like, fucking wow.
No kidding.
That is fucking civilized. Like,
that's crazy. And to think, like, that's really interesting to think of that happening, and yet then you have this very low murder rate. And I mean, is that also with crime? Is the crime rate relatively low? I mean, it's a massive city too. I mean, just millions and millions of people.
Yeah.
What's the crime like? Low?
It's non-existent. Wow. I mean, so the places where you might actually get some stolen are generally the Korean parts of town, but otherwise, I mean, I even asked, like I asked this girl, what is I stayed at a hostel. I was like, what's the worst part of Tokyo? What's the ghettoest, dirtiest part of Tokyo?
I want to go there.
Yeah, it's this area up north, and I was like, I'm going there. And like the metros don't even run out there. You gotta take like some of these little JR trains, and I go out there, and fucking normal, man. It actually kind of looked like America. Like here, there actually was some trash on the street, but otherwise, I was like, this ain't that fucking bad, man. This is still like nice.
Oh, wait, so your ghetto's like Manhattan. Cool.
Yeah. It's like, are you shitting me? Like, they're poor, but
wow,
they weren't gangster. Like they have street lights. That's how I judge things in the world. Because I'm from a third world. Like if there's street lights and cars, then you're not in that bad of an area.
Yeah.
But if there's no street lights, no cars.
It's like when I was in LA, like thinking about, there was a few times I was in some kind of sort of sketchy areas and kind of lived in this warehouse and stuff. And oh yeah, it's pretty ghetto. And then I like experienced like more of like a real ghetto in LA. And I was like, oh, like this is what and you're right. It was like suddenly there were no streetlights and like all these people were just there on the side of the road and there was just trash and people and you're just like locking your doors going like, all right, man, if I have to hit my accelerator and run a motherfucker over, I will, because this is sketchy as hell, like You definitely know when you're like in a, it's kind of ghetto, as opposed to like, oh, this is like real time shit now.
Yeah.
Which is non-existent in Japan.
In Japan, you can sit out in the middle of the night in a little alley and just nobody's going to bother you. Nothing's going to happen to you. If you run into the cops, they're basically super nice. They're like, wow. I mean, I don't even, like, you see some of the cops there you see in Tokyo are like 80 years old. You know, these motherfuckers don't. They're basically just there for tourists to like give directions to tourists. I don't know what they do.
Wow.
It's crazy, and it's cultural, right? It's very much cultural. That's one of the things that Americans are really bad about. You know, I tell this in my Latin American history classes. Like, for whatever reason, Americans conflate culture with race. For them, like, your race is your culture, and they don't really deal with the concept of different cultures within a race, right?
Yeah.
And this is why, like, Americans say like Americans in Mexico will say stupid shit like, hey, do people get offended here if you call them Mexicans? And I'm like, are you fucking retarded? You're in Mexico. Like, Mexico
no,
is
true. Like, I think especially, you know, because there's a lot of people that have been so I mean, you almost feel bad for them because they've been so you're so afraid to say the wrong thing to anybody, you know? Oh my gosh, is it okay if I call you a Mexican? Yes, because he's a fucking Mexican. You know what I mean? Like literally, seriously, like it's not derogatory to like say, hey, that person has this skin color and that person is Asian. Like, no, these are facts. You know?
But it's what I get all the time, which is you don't look Mexican. Like,
well, I almost made that joke earlier. It's a good one. It's like, wait, no, it's true. And like, we really are like that. Like, judge, because anyone would look at me and just go like, oh, that dude's white. Like, and we don't really give a fuck about anything beyond that when you're white. Like, and it's like,
white is your culture.
Yeah, it's like, you're white. Like, and we could give a shit about anything else about you. Okay, fine. I don't care. But like, yeah, with someone like you might be like, oh, what? Oh my God, you're Mexican. Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. What is it? Because he's just like a dude who happens to be, you know, half Mexican. Like, what's so crazy about that?
Yeah, like, you know, that's why they speak Spanish, because Europeans went there.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of white Mexicans.
Yeah,
there's black Mexicans, but it's that idea that, you know, Mexico is a race of people.
It's funny, right? Because you think that too. It's like, I really think without even subconsciously thinking that, you almost in your mind, you're just like, you picture like everyone living in a certain place, Mexico or Brazil or Japan. They're all one thing. It's all like, no, it's just like anywhere else. It's like there's just lots of different people there from different places, you know, and who look different, you know. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe not as much in certain Asian countries, you know.
Well, Asians have it. So Asians do a different thing. It's what I've noticed about, like, my wife does this, and I asked her about it the other day, because she'll describe somebody. So in Vietnam, if people come from Japan, all the Japanese, all the Chinese, all the Koreans, if they're from the West, they're not German, then they're just foreigner. It doesn't matter if they're American or German or French or African or South American, foreigner. Japanese still be Japanese. Like, within their race, you get to have your own culture.
That's really, but you know, that's interesting, because I feel like it could very much be the same way for saying us is just some non-Asian, you know, U.S. citizen or whatever, from where you're just like, oh yeah, they're Asian, and you're sort of like, oh no, but they're Vietnamese specifically, or Korean or Chinese. They're very different, you know. Like you said, there's very culturally very different. It actually looks too, like, you know, they definitely have distinct features and all that. And there's a lot of different countries, you know, Asian countries, but it's you can just go like, oh, they're Asian or they're this or they're that. And I think it's like, you know, I don't think that's something that you should necessarily get offended about. It's just, it's interesting, because I could see that it makes sense to me that being from an Asian country, they'd see it the same way, because they're very specific about like those countries and knowing, you know, and then they're just like, oh, this white schmuck from Europe, whatever.
Yeah, well, they super focus on culture, right? They're like, the Japanese are super. I mean, they're straight up, they're cultural supremacists in Japan. Like, they will constantly be like, you know, we're not buying those other things. Like, so I have a friend that deals in like international trade, and one of the things that they were complaining about was that it's really hard to sell chicken from Brazil in Japan, because the Japanese don't want to buy it, and they charge twice as much for chickens grown in Japan than the Brazilian chicken, because they just think that everything in Japan is better.
So it's nationalistic in that sense, like they're very patriotic in a way.
Yeah, it's very cultural, right? You're not Japanese, you wouldn't understand.
But it's not looked at as like a racist. You know, it's nothing like that. It's just a pride about your your culture, right?
It is. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I will
Is
say,
the religion pretty unanimous across the board too?
you know,
Then?
they're pretty atheistic in Japan. Actually, I haven't noticed very many religious people. Some, but not that. They're sort of respectful towards the national religion culture, but not. You know, they don't go to the temple and pray all the time. Yeah, I mean, they're not particularly religious. They're very nationalistic.
Yeah.
It does get annoying after a while. The funny thing is that you
Does
hear
it seem condescending? Did it ever seem condescending to you?
sometimes, but
Yeah.
not that much. Very slightly. The thing is, like, all the Japanese things are better. It's like you're like, well, fuck.
They've earned those bragging rights.
It's annoying at times, but then you're like, this shit is better.
You're right. My American TV broke. God damn it.
Well, like you buy a T-shirt in Japan, and you're like, you can just feel that, like this is a piece of shit American T-shirt, probably made in China, but like you buy it, like I got some T-shirts. I got some T-shirts at the Godzilla store, and like the material is thicker and stronger, and you're just like, God damn, like everything is.
Yeah, it's the Godzilla store, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. So like sometimes then they like to tell you for some reason, I haven't figured this one out, but they're always like, Japan has 4 seasons, and you're like, okay, and then you hear it like 5 or 6 times, and you're like, fuck are you talking like? Well, you know what? America has 6. You're like, oh yeah,
Texas has none. It's just what it is, whatever it wants that day. So there.
We have 2 seasons: blazing hot and not blazing hot.
Yeah, nailed it right there.
But there's these cultural differences.
Where did you travel when you were in the Marines? Didn't you go abroad?
The only place I've gone overseas is South Korea, and it wasn't like Seoul or anything. It was like the very southern tip of South Korea in a little bitty town. Yeah.
How many
when I was there, it was
there?
hot, and then it got extremely cold. Like in the span of 2 days or 2 weeks, right? So it was like hot and muggy. You take a shower, you dry off, and then you're all sweaty again because it's so humid. And then all of a sudden, it just gets cold, and you're freezing your ass off. And all the people that didn't pack their winter gear wish they would have. So,
what were the strip clubs like?
I don't think I went to one. There's definitely no. There's definitely bars that we went to that had girls, but it wasn't like a traditional American strip club. It was very, very strange. Now there was a brothel that some other folks were going into, and it was very popular because they had a midget, like on Total Recall, right? I'm sorry, a little person, whatever we're calling them nowadays.
Dwarf. I mean, it could have been. I never understood that there's a difference between a midget and a dwarf. I believe. Man, I just thought of 2 stories that I'm going to write down now. Well, stories.
Which one is a halfling?
Dwarves are also in fantasy. Midgets are not. And there's midget wrestling. I've never heard of dwarf wrestling. I would actually like to know. I would like to know. Like, I mean, I'm sure I could fucking Google it.
I don't know.
So I love the way nowadays we can say things like, I'd really like to know that. Well, then fucking Google it, asshole. Obviously, you don't want to know that bad.
Takes all of 5 seconds to find out.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, I guess I really don't give a shit about what the difference between a midget and a dwarf. I had fuck this guy. First of all, I had this art teacher when I was in 8th grade. There was a few teachers who really rubbed me wrong over the years, and I'm bitter. And there was this one guy, and he was a little person, whatever, fine, but he was a dick. That's like the taller you were, the more he hated you, and he just hated. Also, I think he was always trying to like hit on girls. He was like first of all, you're a fucking creep, all right, and he's just like I was like trying to hit on the girls and like dogging on the dudes, trying to like assert himself and hopping up on tables and talking shit and it's just a little. I mean, I no pun intended. It's just a little shit, and he'd be like, but I mean, I just don't know why he like didn't seem to like me or some other people, and he was always just talking about Wizard of Oz and like all the conquests of little people, and it's just like, bro, can't you just teach us like fucking origami and shit like you're supposed to? Like, we don't, I'm not here to learn about the ins and outs of the midget culture. Sorry.
Is it because he had small hands that you wanted him to teach origami?
Yes, real fine little midget hands.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was that, and then there was something else that Oh, if I may, I'm gonna go back to the Jamaica thing. No, I won't actually. It's too weird of a fucking story. It's just too much. I won't go there. It's too much. There's too much back into it. Huh? Yeah, I started to think of like all the details that were. I mean, I could leave it all out, I guess, but I was like,
I was banging this midget in the playground, and then the cops came, and they
no, I guess I told you the story. Yeah, that was it. Playgroundmidgetsex.com. Wow, look at the big black cock on that white midget. This is crazy.
You laugh, and that's probably out there already.
No, but it's true. Well, but I won't go through all the ins and outs of the story, but basically a guy came up to me and someone else on the beach and was just like, oh, have y'all been to some bar, blah, blah, blah? And we're like, no. And he's like, oh, you gotta go. They've got this midget with a 12-inch cock. And I'm like, okay, I won't be going. Thanks, though. I mean, I guess, in hindsight, like maybe I should have gone and witnessed this, It's like the Tijuana donkey girl or something, the eighth wonder of the world. I know I riled Damon up as soon as you mentioned the Tijuana donkey. He's gonna fucking go off.
Tell me, there's a midget there with a 12-inch dick. I'm like, I kind of want to see that.
I know. I gotta say, like a part of me goes, I should have gone and seen this 12-inch midget.
I wasn't gonna go, but sir, you piqued my interest.
Well, that's the problem though with stuff like that is then like you may have gone to some country and experienced a bunch of beautiful culture and done all these cool things, and you come back and you go like, oh yeah, weed, midget cock, black prostitute. Yeah, that's Jamaica. That's it, summed up. Oh, cool. Okay. I don't think you're always giving the most accurate assessments of. I mean, God, there's not even places I haven't even been, and look at me just being a good American, just telling bullshit that I've heard and without researching it at all. Oh, they shit on shelves in Germany. Okay, I guess that's a thing according to this guy that's never been there.
They shit.
Shit in the road in Japan.
I was gonna say I will say that I wouldn't mind going back to South Korea because I think at the time, being in the military, you don't really get to experience, the culture like you would because you're just stuck on a military base.
And all you want to do when you're not is just probably hit a bar, right? And just...
Yeah. If you're not on duty and you go out into town, you hit a bar, you've only got so many hours to play around with, right? Then you go back and it's back to work.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind going back, but then going to see like Seoul instead or something versus. Can't move Chuck, armpit of South Korea.
The Florida of South Korea?
Pretty much, yeah, the Florida of South Korea.
Yeah, Florida. I really wanted to hit up South Korea too. I just haven't gotten around to it. The only thing I've hit up is their airport, and that's my favorite airport is that Incheon airport. That's a fucking badass airport. Did you go there when you were in the Marines?
No, we landed in Osan.
Oh, yes, you landed.
Yeah, I was in the military base in Osan. So.
Oh, that makes sense. It's a badass. Like they have little robots that go around with like a screen on them, and then you ask them for directions and stuff. It's super fucking cool.
That does not surprise me at all. That's so. Well, it seems like they're so progressive in terms of anything tech. You
just realize how like the United States, for all their money, has not really invested in infrastructure the way other countries have, like the rest of the developed world. It's really fucking annoying. Because it's not like you don't have the money here. Like, there's tons of money. And we can have high-speed trains all over this motherfucker for, like, 10% of the military budget.
Yeah. It just sounds like the United States is really masters of mismanaging money, It's.
And these are issues that never come up in campaigns, by the way.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's go down that road. I'd love to hear what you have to say in terms of any of that stuff.
Oh, like all the political shit?
I think that summed it up. Political shit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's all. Political shit summed up in 2 words. Oh, the political shit. Then done.
So this is what I would tell you before you even talk about anything political. Americans and Western world in general, the developed world in general, right? You have huge populations of people growing up on the internet, growing up in a shitty education system, more and more people being raised by single parents, higher levels of depression, higher levels. If you just Google narcissism epidemic, there's an explosion in the number of narcissists, right? These are sort of dark triad traits, what they call dark triad. If you ever look that up, it's narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. So you have going on, birth rates are beginning to drop across the developing world. I mean, people are not happy. They're fucking weird, right? I would call it behavioral sync. If you ever look into it's a psychological experiment, but it's basically people's behavior being sick mentally, right? And you can see it sort of manifesting in greater numbers. Now, whatever happens politically happens on top of that society that's all fucked up, right? That now produces shit music, shit movies, shit art, shit architecture. Everything is vulgar and nasty and just sort of lowest common denominator bullshit. That's the population that's getting all riled up. So nothing is going to be healthy, right? Like they live in a fucking weird fantasy world. The people that are, it's a population that's depressed and fucking narcissistic. On top of that, what are your real issues? Well, Trump is a douchebag. Everybody knows he's a douchebag. The trouble is that the Democrats are also fucking crazy. Like some of the shit that's going on is just fucking nuts. And people just, one thing I've learned from, I teach Latin American history. I show people some of the horrible things that the American government has done abroad. And they always ask me, well, why does this happen? And I'm like, because Americans only give a shit about what they're told to give a shit about. If you never see it on the news, then you don't care that it happens, period. And keep that in mind when you see shit on the news. The only reason you're seeing it is because someone has decided that you should be allowed to see it. And they have, for whatever reason, the media has decided to piss everybody off, right? And it's working, and they're already fucking weird. They're a weird population of weird people. And now they're acting out like of all the things that are going on. Like I showed, if you want to say it's, so here's a statistic, right? America, talking about infrastructure, American deaths by car accident is at like 3 to 4 times the rate of the rest of the developed world. The reason that is because the U.S. has shit for public transportation, right? The UK, Europe, Japan, they all have great public transportation. So people take trains. The number of people that die is something like 35,000 people a year, compared to like 2,000 in England, right, or less. If you want to save lives, build trains. You could save almost 30,000 people a year. That's a lot. That pales in comparison to anything happening like with police brutality or whatever, murder, all of that, right? You could just save 30,000 people a year by putting in trains, but you don't give a shit about them because nobody told you to give a shit about that. You give a shit that, some people got killed by cops, right? That's bad, right? American police there's definitely a need for reform in the American justice system. But is it a giant problem? I mean, how many people are actually killed? How many unarmed people are killed by the police in a country of 300 million people? I don't know how many it is. We could probably look it up. I bet you it's less than 100 that are unarmed, because every time one of them gets killed, it's a huge deal, right? Especially if those people are black, right, or a minority. They're going to make a huge deal out of it. We see that all. But is it 30,000 people? Why do you care about it? Because they broadcast it to you. So a lot of this political stuff is you're being fed it. You're being, pumped with negativity, and it's having an effect. People are seeing, if one channel shows you all the bad thing, everything bad that Trump says constantly, you're going to form a negative image and get mad about it. If you go on Breitbart, have you ever been on Breitbart, the website? Every fucking day they put a story about, hey, an illegal immigrant ran a red light and hit a kid. Hey, an illegal immigrant robbed a liquor store. And they have a story every fucking day. Never mind that fucking that same day, 1,000 other people did the same thing. One of them was an illegal immigrant, and the thing they cover is the one thing the fucking illegal immigrant did. And so people read that every day, and they're like, these fucking illegal immigrants are just fucking shooting up the place. You get mad about what you see, and that's what they've chosen to broadcast at people. And so people are getting, they're rats in a cage. Every day, just fucking Trump. This guy Trump, he's a dictator. We got to get him out. You're like,
yeah, and then and it's both sides. Both sides do it. Both, and it's, and you're right. It just seems like it's coming from every source and everywhere, and it's just this already narcissistic, diseased society of confused people that are just trained that nothing matters but attention anymore. And then And then you start riling them all up with deliberate propaganda to be divisive, and it has to make you wonder, why is this happening? Who gains? Certainly, I think oftentimes not the people that would like to think that are going to gain. You know, the low class tends to stay the low class, unfortunately. You know, lower impoverished,
Zappa,
I should say.
Didn't he have an interview where he talked about that, like the media manipulation? And I think I saw in there.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Yeah, it was great with guys like him, you know, back in the 80s and stuff, would just go on an interview with somebody and not do the play nice Hollywood, you know, suck each other's dicks routine, but just call them out and just tell them how full of shit they were and how much of a bunch of bullshit the whole thing was. Sometimes I used to see celebrities. Remember Fiona Apple when she won a Grammy? It was hilarious. And
yeah, that was like the best.
It was kind of like the coolest thing ever in a way, because she was like, this is all bullshit. And I was just like,
all these people suck.
It was amazing, kind of. It was like calling, you know, it's like, this is all bullshit, which is true. We live in a smoke and mirrors world. We're fed what someone wants us to feed, whether they want us to buy a product or vote for a politician or serve their agenda in some way or another. And I think if you go into things without that realization right off the get go, then that's bad, because you know, you can become very gullible and easily manipulated, and that's what people who are in power, striving power, do. They manipulate, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think that was all a very bravo to your speech, man. I say that a lot too. I just think the narcissism has just gotten out of control. The shift from generation after generation throughout history, where for more or less, unless you were an elitist, really wealthy class, you know, aristocrats, you basically survival was the number one sort of, you know, MO. And now it's shifted to like attention seems to be in younger. It's all about fucking attention. And it makes me question a lot of times when people are out being quote unquote activists or protesting this or protesting that. And I'm not even singling it out to what's going on right now. Just anything in the 30 fucking years since reality, quote unquote reality TV, this catastrophe hit us. And it's just people that want to be on TV. They want to be famous. They want to be seen. They want to be noticed, and they don't give a fuck. It's like, I was having a conversation about this with a guy just this morning, and it was really funny. We were saying, you know, as musicians, a lot of frustrated musicians, you know, we can spend all this money and do all this thing in our art and our craft to make a song, take it or leave it, don't like it, but let's not fool ourselves. It's not really that much different than it's always been. There are gatekeepers. Yes, there's the internet. But to really get to the high level, right, there's people that still control that. And the means has changed, but it still exists. And so it doesn't matter. You can write Bohemian Rhapsody, but there's no means for you to get it out there and for people to, you know, the money and the power gatekeeper, you know, people that push it out there and make it aware. It doesn't matter. So nowadays you could have Freddie Mercury, you know, some guy going, hey, listen to this masterpiece song I wrote, or Mozart. And people would put that up against a girl putting something up her butthole and be like, I'm going to watch this chick put something up her butthole. Like, this is the society we live in now. Like, it's a porno culture, and it's like immediate gratification, immediate attention. I'm bored as fuck if it's not something that I've been told to like, or that's immediately creating some sort of reaction from me, because I don't have the time to take to invest in anything. And so you're celebrating porn stars. You're celebrating bad behavior. You're celebrating all the things that really should be, or that were once sort of like, bad. And then the art, you know, not to say it doesn't still exist all over the place, of course, but it's kind of just like, it's this sea of just like, who gives a fuck, you know?
Yeah.
It's the because it's every man for himself. Me. I want to be famous. I want people to see what I'm doing. If I have to jump off a fucking building to do it, fuck it. I don't give a shit about your 30 years of invested time into your fucking art, you know, fuck you, you know, I'm about me, you know? So, I mean, and that's not every single person, I think, but that's a cultural disease, you know, and then has been manifesting for years. And now with Generation Z, is that full-fledged, and we're seeing the blowback with Donald Trump, and we're seeing the retaliation with the radical left, and it's just a fucking disaster. And tell me how the fuck I could go to Japan and live in the ghetto, because it sounds like a better place.
It's tough to immigrate to Japan. I would recommend just go to Vietnam.
All right, sounds cool. Vietnam's never had any historical problems that I can recall.
Yeah, well, you know what's funny, just for perspective. So I showed that stuff to my wife, you know, all the people rioting, and her response was, "Why doesn't the government shoot them?"
Yeah, I mean, dude, seriously, like, I think it's when people are going like, oh, and it's Nazi Germany, and people are getting snatched up and this and that. Was like, I don't know the ins and outs of this, so I don't want to like, correct me if I'm wrong. Anybody can bring this up with me, but like, okay, if people are out breaking the law and doing crazy shit, and someone goes and, you know, picks them up in a van, and it's like, well, you were kind of like breaking the law and like riding and doing whatever. Like, it's not, I don't think they're just like driving through neighborhoods, kicking in doors like a fucking Gestapo, you know, like, but you're right. It's like this notion of like, how dare you? it's so fucking insane. There are people now in the United States that are like, no, this guy is a criminal, and it's like people are lobbying for, how dare you arrest a criminal? How dare you? Dude, the guy's a fucking criminal. What the fuck? And I'm not talking about George Floyd. I'm not talking about that. That's fucked up. Who cares about his past? That was insanely tragic and horrible. I'm not talking about that. But it's this you're arguing for the clear wrongs. Like, it's insanity. And it's funny that you say something like that, because there's so many other places that are just like, why didn't they shoot him? When America's like, wait, he only shot at a cop once? How you're supposed to get shot at least 3 times before you do anything. What the fuck, And I mean, I'm certainly not advocating police brutality and all this bullshit, but like, it's pretty strange. Like, I think it just goes to show, like, when you have it so fucking good that you just expect, like, you can literally get away with murder, and expect to get away with it. It's kind of fucked up, man. And that works for bad cops or criminals, whatever. I mean, that's one and the same.
Well, this is one of the things why I get really cynical, and why I think that nothing will be fixed in this country. Because, so notice after George Floyd's death, you pretty much had consensus. Everybody was like, that's fucked up. Right, left, everybody was like, that's fucked up. At that point, you had the impetus and the political will to make a real change in the sort of police enforcement. That is all gone now, right? Everybody, there is no more consensus. You've gotten your split right back down the middle.
Now it's just got huge, bigger division.
Nothing's going to get fixed. And this is a sign of a society that just can't fucking get its shit together enough to fix anything. I mean, is it going to get any better? This is why I'm sorry. I'm super cynical now. So I'm just
I understand. I mean, it's, it makes sense. Like, why would you believe in a system that continually, and we're still talking about one of the greatest places in the world, which is fucking nuts, like, in terms of the overall, scheme of things, like, it's still,
even
a lot of people have it really good here, but it is true. It's like, when you've got a broken, fucked up system that just keeps repeating the same mistakes, like, who the fuck gives a shit if Trump or Biden is in office? Like, you really think like things are I love the way that every 4 years comes around, everyone thinks that magically some fucking talking head is going to change everything. It's just like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, when things are broken, and like, it doesn't matter if I put a new fucking, head on a fucking scorched fucking doll or whatever. That's a stupid analogy, but I mean, it's like, it's fucked,
Yeah.
It's ugly. It's going to stay ugly.
Yeah, did you ever see that, like, George Carlin? Remember that George Carlin special where he's talking about, America, it's never going to be better. Just leave it the way it is. It's a big fuck. It's a big club, and you're not.
So good. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, and you're not in it. Yeah. It's really, really good.
They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you.
What's true? I mean, and I guess that's the argument against capitalism. I don't think capitalism is all bad. Certainly, I think there's a balance to be had between capitalist and socialist ideas, like, but like,
it's a great example, right? So here's an example of the failure to communicate. So when people on the left say socialism, they don't mean fucking Stalin-esque communism. What they mean is like public health care.
Exactly.
And maybe some free babysitting facilities, stuff like that, right? Roads, infrastructure. That's what they think when they think of socialism. That's what they're talking about. But because there is no communication, the people on the right hear the word socialism, socialized anything, and they're just commies. It's fucking Stalin.
Yeah. They're Stalin. The other side's Hitler because they want a little law and order. It's fucking ridiculous. Yeah.
You want public health care? Well, you're basically Stalin.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, dude, no, I made a joke about this. I had a Facebook post a while back that it was like, I disagreed with someone, so I'm literally Hitler now. Like, this is like, I'm like, hey, guy, you're so like literally Hitler. Right? Donald Trump is everyone's fucking Hitler nowadays. If someone does something you don't like, oh really? Like, I didn't agree with you on that, so I murdered 6 million Jews. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I didn't realize that. Like, I mean, all of a sudden I'm a genocidal maniac that wants to take over the world because I didn't agree with you on one issue. It's fucking insane. People just throw this shit around like it's nothing, and how many people even know fucking jack squat about the history of any of that shit? You do.
Yeah, well, I force my students now to read a chapter of Mein Kampf and the fascist manifesto written by Mussolini, so that they know what fascism is. And it's like, that's not what they're advocating here, right? That has nothing to do with what's going on right now. And you get to like fascism. Frankly, they were disaffected socialists. It was born out of the left. They don't know that either.
Well, you always know something when it's too late. And the funny thing about human beings is that the human beings that even though we've been around for thousands of years, we just love repeating mistakes over and over and over and not learning, you know?
Well, it always involves people, and people do the same shit over and over.
Yeah.
So that's what I told you know, when you get that question, why does history repeat itself? Well, history is just a history of a story about what people do, and people pretty much do the same shit over and over and over for all time immemorial. Dudes are trying to get laid, girls are trying to get a good husband and somebody to take care of their, like, that's always going to be true forever. People like power. That's been true.
You just offended me, Damon.
Give a fuck.
Those are traditional stereotypes, and I am offended.
Yeah, who cares? Like, gives a fuck about, like, who gives a fuck if you're like, what do you? I don't understand why anybody cares. Like if you say I'm offended, like, so what? Who fucking cares?
Right. Change the channel, you fucking pussy. Yeah.
I don't care. Like, here's the thing: is a lot of these sort of, this is what, like, one of the things that I think will break down in this country, right? When it comes to a lot of these sort of social justice issues, they're predicated. So if you call someone a racist, that's predicated on them not wanting to be a racist, right? Because if you call a KKK member a racist, it's pointless, right? They're like, yeah, done. My whole platform, right? So it only works, it only has any effect on people who don't view themselves as racist. When that begins to break down, if people stop giving a fuck about those things, you stop, you know, when they're like, oh, you've offended me. Well, after a while, we don't give a fuck what you think because we hate you. And that just begins to break down slowly until things get ugly again, right? I mean, you can revert. That's the other thing. Here's a fun historical fact, and I start there when I talk about rights. Throughout history, people have had rights before. You are not the first country to suddenly come up with rights. Every single time people have had rights, after time, those rights go away, and you go back to fucking nothing. And I do world history. Here's the Code of Hammurabi. This is from 1600 BC. Here's a whole list of, like, women could divorce their husbands in 1600 BC. Where are they 500 years later? Fucking nothing. Women have no rights. Not until the Roman Empire did they get rights back. And then when the Roman Republic went away, fucking nothing. You go back to being property. Again, rights go away all the time. History is up and down, and civilizations rise and civilizations fall, and all this shit you have will go away. It has never been any other way. So enjoy it while it fucking lasts. Right now, people give a fuck that you're offended. In the future, they're not going to even think you're allowed to be people.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too. Like, I've always, like, taken a little bit of you know. And granted, there are some people that live here and they just have the worst shit fucking lives and they've got a bad rap, and rightfully so. They're not going to be like, oh, America's a wonderful place because they've had a shit fucking deal, you know. But I think for a great percentage of people, they've had a reasonable deal, you know, and it's like, and some really great deals. But I think it's like, you know, when you're living in a place where you can speak your mind and you can go protest and without getting shot in the fucking head, that's a win to start with, because you can't fucking do that everywhere, you know. And
right.
That to me has always been the greatest part, is like that you have that right to protest. Like and when someone starts railing on, oh, the worst, this and that, I'm like, well, yeah, there's a lot of fucking problems, but man, the fact that we can speak our mind about it, as long as we can do that, okay, that we can make progress, or at least we're not going backwards. The day we can't fucking do that, we're in some big fucking trouble.
And here's what that's predicated on, right? It's the fact that if they take that away, right, people will complain, they get angry, they still care about it. Right? You can't just go out into the street and fucking mow down protesters because the rest of the country's gonna be like, what the fuck are you doing? No, burn down the cities, right, in response. But if you get to that point where people begin, like, how many people, what was that young kid that just shot some protesters that attacked him?
Oh, yeah, the one in Wisconsin.
Yeah. How many people are like, good, fuck those people? How much longer before people are just like, I'm fine with the government going out there with
it's
tanks.
Bad, yeah.
You know, and that's what lets it happen, is when people stop to give a fuck about it, the attitude shifts.
Well, and that comes back to the whole thing about, which is ironic, kind of, because we're such a seemingly just self-absorbed narcissistic culture, but like this desire to choose teams, and it's almost like, I mean, people are literally like that. It's like, well, I don't give a fuck that person died because they don't agree with me, you know, like, fuck those protesters or fuck the cops or whatever the case. That's when you really step back and think about it, you kind of go, wow, that's really disturbing to even that. What I mean, anyone who says they haven't said those kind of things is probably fucking lying. Like, most people get very heated and we take sides, and it just blows my mind continually about how people are just so diehard on the left and right with the politicians, because it's just like, man, come on, these guys are all fucking us in the ass one way or another. So we treat these guys like they're gods. They're just human beings that are usually way more fucked up than us and than the average person, and then the leaders of the free. It's nuts, you know. And so the whole how sad is it when you're going, lesser of two evils, go. I mean, really, like, wow, that's lesser of two evils. This is our voting option. Yay, you know. So no, I think that's true, and it all comes back to what we continually talk about, and it's just like, if people have got to just chill the fuck out on this and start talking to each other one-on-one as human beings and try to make progress at, you know,
turn off
the TV, go out, talk to people, actually take action.
Turn that shit off, go outside, you know,
read a book,
hang out with your friends. Yeah, read fucking Moby Dick. Have you read Moby Dick yet? Read fucking Moby Dick. It's a classic. There, put that on your list instead of being on Twitter every day and infuriating yourself for an hour a day.
Yeah, and trolling. Trolling. I've been guilty. I'm sure we all have. It's super guilty, especially when the pandemic started and I got real on this mass crusade. Well, I fucking fuck, you know, and I was kind of going a little crazy with it. And I'm just like, who am I? Like, what control do I have? I can just make my own decisions, hope for the best, and fortunately, you know, stay busy enough and do things that matter way more in the end than me bitching on Facebook every day.
Start with yourself, right?
Not to say I'm not going to do it, huh?
Start with yourself.
Yeah, start with your fucking self. Quit telling everyone else how to live their fucking lives unless you've got your own shit together. You know, like the old, what's that classic saying? The judge not, you know.
Judge what?
Judge not. You have a smaller cock than me.
Judge not, lest you be judged. Something like that. Yeah, I mean, just people got to let it go. Listen to some fucking music. That is, you know, if we go back to music, at least the internet, I've noticed one of the positive things I noticed is that a lot of the kids today, they don't listen to the radio. They just go on the internet and find obscure fucking bands, and some of them have some pretty cool things like that they listen to. And you really you can listen to all sorts of shit. Like, I mean, I have like people I find on YouTube that just do their own little covers and make their own little songs that have like 32 followers, and I'm 10 of them, you know.
That's great, man. You know, I think that's so inspiring for someone like me. It doesn't matter. It's ageless, I think, in terms of just like being the guy that's not like some huge celebrity and just going like, man, it means the world. And someone like finds your stuff, what do you call it, art or whatever it is. It's just some form of expression that's not really harming anybody, you know? And it's like, cool. Like, this is really cool when people can just discover that. Again, you're discovering someone else in a positive way, you know, through music or through something artistic. And it's, you know, you could choose to do that and be like, hey, this is a cool song, man, dig this. And you just made someone's fucking day and you just found a cool tune. Or you could go be a dickhead and fucking troll on someone and tell them what a piece of shit they are for thinking different than you know? Like, everyone has that fucking individual choice.
Because that's healthy, right? It's finding people, you know. But yeah, I don't know what's wrong with people, man. I don't know why. There are times when I'll get too much on the news. I'm like, all right, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really thankful when I get really busy and I don't have the time to really sit and get on social media too much and watch TV, because it's just like, yeah, for a while I hadn't for years, and the pandemic started, and I really I got sucked in the whole news thing, and I was really, you know, on Team Mask and really going for it and putting my stuff out. I mean, still not nearly as obnoxious or aggressive as a lot of people, but I mean, I was definitely spending a lot of time with it and stewing on it and you know, and wrote some songs about it, which I think that part of it I think was productive, actually. But like, then the whole George Floyd thing happened and the protest, and at a certain point, it's just so much, it's so disheartening and so negative. It's just like, I can't just keep doing this to myself. It doesn't mean you don't care, but it's just not, like you said, it's not healthy at a certain point. You know, take some sort of action, do what you can, you know, and there's ways that I've participated in some things that I'm, you know, at least maybe sort of sidelining it right at the moment, but at least listening in ways and getting information in ways that can influence some kind of change rather than just fueling my own aggression about the whole thing, and but yet being rendered helpless and, yelling and screaming and fighting about it doesn't really do anything. So, yeah.
Find positive outlet. Just don't fill your shit with negativity. Like, especially, this generation now. I mean, they're so plugged. I don't even think they know what else to do because they're so.
It's a void. I think that it was. We're speaking in broad terms. There's plenty of kids that go out and play sports and get outside and do things and have lives and communities. I mean, it's got to be really difficult right now. I'm in an age where I don't. I'm like, this is great. I was kind of getting burned out. I've got some time. I can just chill at home and get things done. It hasn't really affected me in a super negative way personally, thank goodness. But like a lot of people are stuck at home and they, I used to have the anxiety about going out and doing, and I get that that's rough. It just makes all this that much harder, especially when you're a young person, I think, because you have all that, you want to go do all these things when you're young. If you're a little bit older, you might just be like, whatever, I'll just watch MacGyver tonight. I'm cool. I'll read the paper. But like, it's so, I think you got a lot of angst from a lot of people that just, they don't have an outlet. They don't know what to do with all their emotions. And there's just this void and the worst thing too, been guilty also, but people just I think that not having an individual identity or not even knowing what an individual identity is, like just sort of latching on to other things and becoming a crusader. I think a lot of people do that. Just jump ship from one thing to another, and they're 1 minute they're into this and the next minute they're super into that, and now they're crusading for this and they're activists for that. But it's like, well, what do you really think though? Like, who are you at your core? Like, like Vic said, like figure out your own shit. Start with yourself, and that is where you need to start before you go out. Don't try to change the world until you know what you want to change.
Yeah, definitely don't recycle all the talking points. Think for yourself. Improve yourself first, right? Whether it's through fitness, going on a walk, lifting some weights, just do something. But develop your own. Have your own thoughts. Don't be a parrot. Right.
That's a big thing that I don't know like I've noticed from my students that they can't think for themselves and no one's ever asked them their opinion. Because a lot of my questions, like probably 50% of the questions I give them, I'm specifically like, what do you think about this? And sometimes they're just like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, just tell me your fucking opinion. And they're like what I think? And I'm like, yes. What the fuck? Like, why is it so hard? Just tell me what you think. And they still will cut and paste fucking Wikipedia shit in there. I'm like,
yeah, because everything's there, right? Everything's there at your fingertips.
You don't need a source. Just tell me what you think. This is bullshit or no?
Because you don't have to go figure anything out. It's all right there at your fingertips. You can Google anything and have it handed to you in a second. And it's funny because you say that with the big classroom setting of students. I've experienced that for years and years in terms of music lessons. The younger kids will come in. For us, when we were teenagers, especially, maybe when you're a little younger, I get it. But if you're a teenager, and I mean, it's just like we identified with music. That's who we were. That's what we're such amazing. Oh, I love this. I love this. Kids coming out, what do you listen to? And I don't know. I'm like, how the fuck can you not know what you listen to? Like, I'm just like, they're like, it's almost like they're terrified to answer something. Like, well, no, just tell me any song or can you think of any deer in headlights? It's like, oh my God, okay.
Some questions, man.
Yeah. I think they're afraid of any sort of identity or something.
Pick up your phone. I'm going to text it to you. What do you think? Just answer me on your text, and then they can answer.
Dude, you may have something there. Like it's so weird, and like there's that like bitter old white guy part of me that's like, white has nothing to do with it, but like, where I'm just like, I'm angry that I grew up in a time where I didn't have the luxury of like, I probably could have like mustered up the balls to at least text a girl in high school, but God forbid I couldn't walk up to him and ask him out face to face. I was mortified. These fuckers got it so easy. You can just get on fucking Facebook and say some shit and be like, oh, I was drunk the next day. Like we didn't have that fucking. You had to man up and pick up your goddamn telephone. Your mom would probably listen in the other fucking room. It sucked.
Or go talk to her. You had to go.
You had to go fucking talk to somebody face to fucking face, man. And like that is a big fucking difference talking to someone face to face and only communicating on the other side of a computer screen. That is a huge difference. You had to ask for that phone number. Yeah.
Right. Hope it's the right one.
And I never did, and I had to jack off for years, and I'm mad about it.
It's there. It's a weird generation. I was going to tell you. Have you ever heard of the mouse utopia experiment?
Yes, I actually recently heard about that.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah.
You should. So, like, I think here's my theory. I think that's actually unfolding in people right now. is that So just to give you a recap, so that for your listeners,
please, yes.
So the Mouse Utopia experiment, they put a bunch of mice in a contained area, and they give them unlimited amounts of food and water and bedding, and they create little areas for them to be. And the experiment is basically to see how high the population will grow. And it turned out, in every time they did the experiment, that the mice would never fill the enclosure. Right, at some point they would peak, and then the birth rates would drop off. And the mice would become completely psychologically dysfunctional until the point that the entire community would die off, right? And they're like, what the fuck? Why? They have all the food, the water. Why did they die and eventually stop breeding entirely? And what happened is that in these enclosures, these mice would get so psychologically fucked up that they could no longer interact with each other in normal ways. Like they couldn't breed. They didn't know. Some of the mice, like, it's a really interesting experience. So like some of the mice would just go off and groom themselves their whole life and never interact with other mice if they could help it.
They were the Instagram models.
Yeah, they were called you know what's funny? They're called the beautiful ones because all they did was groom. And that's exactly what I think. They're the Instagram models, right? Too good. Like,
speaking of fucking narcissism, everyone, you know, every girl now is with a phone is a model, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, and I mean, I follow a lot of dirty girls on Instagram.
I mean, God bless them and all, but you know, let's call it like we see it, you know.
Yeah, every time I see one of these girls, I'm like, well, there's another bitch that's gonna die alone. And that's what so a long time, like that's what happens to these girls. Like they get into their 40s or their late 30s, and they've always been too good for everybody, and now they're too old to have kids, and they're too old to do anything, and they just fucking die alone, man. It's fucking
cats. Yeah.
Lots of cats.
Dude, I remember like years ago, there was this girl. Like one of the first Playboys I saw was this chick named Petra Verkayak, right? Big old titties, hot chick, and she ended up being like one of the most photographed women in Playboy, and she's like 52 now. But there's one time I got on her site, paid like $10 to use her site, and I actually chatted with her for a little bit. And this is like 15 years ago. And she literally, I asked her, like, what are you doing? I mean, like, what do you want to do? And she's like, I just want to get married and have kids. And at the time, she was already like 36. And I'm like, you're like one of the hottest bitches on earth. How can you not find a man to knock you up? And now she's like in her early 50s and fucking never got married, never had any kids. It's like too late to have kids. Like,
was it just never, like, no one was good enough, or what was the deal?
I didn't ask her. I didn't tell her like, hey, what the fuck's wrong with you? I was just, like chatting with her. But I just remember that's what impressed me because I couldn't believe that was her. I was like, what do you want out of life? She's like, I guess I just want to get married and have kids. And I was like, it sounds like a trained reaction to me, you know? Yeah, it's like, but like, I think that they're like pricing themselves out of the market. It's not like, because the reality is it's suckier for women, right? For guys, we're like we get more attractive as we get older, at least, you know, to a certain point. But for women, once they 40, it's not like everybody's like, how do I get a 40-year-old woman?
Right, everyone wants to fuck you your whole life for and then all of a sudden you're like not of interest to every single guy who sees you, you know. And that's got to be a huge mind fuck. Like for you to grow, you know, that's happened. I mean, I can't relate, but I can imagine that's got to be pretty crushing in heart for a sort of a middle-aged woman in that sense, you know?
Yeah, well, all these Instagram, they're like, there's another book called The Paradox of Choice that basically is like a psychological experiment where they find that they can repeat that basically the more choices you have, it makes you more miserable and it creates paralysis. You can just never choose and you're never sure what to choose.
Just kind of nailed our current culture, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what happens to these Instagram models and stuff. They're so hot, they can get any man they want, and they end up not ever having any of them, right? Or picking some of the worst ones.
Nothing's ever good enough, yeah.
And then suddenly nobody wants them. Or at least
suddenly, one day you wake up in your MySpace.
Yeah. All of a sudden, you're MySpace. Yeah, and it's just the trolls that are visiting you now.
You're nothing but a virus-infested, once upon a time, fun ride.
It's a fucked up culture, man.
Yeah, I really think when people talk about this and that, speaking of, I'll say, bring this up here in a sec, but I've written a couple of blogs. I don't really keep up with it, and I know you used to blog a lot. We'll talk about that, but I had written a few things, and just about, but that's what the things I kind of think about are just the narcissism in our society, and we want to blame all these other things, but it's like, well, start looking at why. Not we know guns are capable of killing people. That's why they're designed to kill things, to shoot things, to harm things. But why are people walking into theaters and restaurants and schools and shooting? No normal fucking person does that. And there's always been psychos and shit like that. But more and more since, I don't know, the 70s, it's just serial killers and then mass murders and then this and that. It's not, the guns have been around. That hasn't changed. But these motherfuckers, I think they're so sick, and I think on some subconscious level, this has to do with fucking attention, man, Yeah,
or just any manner of psychological ailments, right? You're not well in the head if you want to go kill. I mean, you're depressed. You probably hate life. I mean, I remember, I think it was a Jordan Peterson video I saw. There was a really good point. He said, there's no greater expression of your contempt for life than going and killing innocent people. Where you're just really fucking up. Yeah. And that's a sign there's a lot of mental health issues in this. I mean, fuck, you used to be able to buy dynamite in this country until like 1972. Like, fucking dynamite at like the general store, and this shit wasn't happening. Fuck guns, like dynamite.
Yeah. Well,
can you imagine if you could buy dynamite today, how fucked this place would be?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, and there was there's a whole different scope of problems, or some people would argue the same problems, and there still are residuals of the same problems. Like we've never reached some immaculate utopia, and we never will. Unfortunately, it's an impossibility, in terms of complete and total racial or sexual equality or anything. But like, there's a lot of things that are a lot better that weren't in the 60s and 50s, especially for certain demographics. But then there's still issues there, but then a lot has changed and become better. But now there's this whole other dynamic of problems, obviously, that we're discussing. And it's just, where you mend one thing, another wound tends to open, kind of thing. But I think, you said something interesting with the choices. I mean, it really is, because it'll drive you mad. And it's just, well, you can do this and you can export this, then you can do that, then you can go to that. Seemingly it's just like everything is just, I always use the baseball card analogy when I was a kid and I started collecting baseball cards, and there was Topps. There was Topps baseball cards, and then there was Donruss, and there was Fleer, and then all of a sudden there's like 4,000 companies and it's like, fuck this, man. I don't know. It's too much. It was fun. It was cool. And it was like, you had a few choices and that was that, or if I go to Cheesecake Factory, I want to kill myself. Like, I can't fucking decide what to order at a place that has every single food in the world and it's all crap anyway. Like, no, like, let me just go. That's why I love Mexican food. It's like, dude, I want fucking enchiladas and tacos and rice and beans, and I'm happy as fuck, man. Like, too much. It's just too much shit coming at you all the time from everywhere.
It happened with jeans, right? Like, it used to be like you just got Levi's, and now they're like, you want the 550s, the 501s, the 505s.
Exactly. I don't know. It's so annoying, man. It's like, God, I just want to put a fucking pair of pants on.
I want the kind that used to be the only kind.
Yeah. Like, I'll call my mom and be like, can you just like sew me fucking shorts like you did when we were kids? Because I literally can't go into Target without having an anxiety attack anymore. Like, I don't know what to get. Well, do you want this brand? And fucking options everywhere, and everything's automated. I mean, of course people are losing their fucking shit on a daily basis, man. Everyone's on 10 in terms of their fucking stress. I mean, I'm not saying it was better to, like, be a character in a Dickens novel, fucking working in a factory for 16 hours a day when you were 4 years old. But, we certainly, with the technological revolution, has also come mainly a wealth of mental illness problems. And it's just, I think it's because it's just this nonstop barrage of just everything immediately all the time. And like you said this the other day, maybe the first guest, Victor, was like, people want immediate results, and everyone's reactionary because everything is so quick, but that's not how things work in the real world,
Well, speaking of mental issues, right? Medication, right? They want a quick fix, medication.
Yeah.
Huge business right there too for somebody. Yeah.
Instead of like figuring out what's actually wrong. Here's a pill.
Oh, so I saw, speaking of that, like what's really wrong, like if you're depressed, well, they'll be like, take Prozac. Well, really, you're depressed because, your parents fucking died and you have no fucking girlfriend or whatever, right? Fix that and you stop being depressed. But they don't want to do that, right? They want a quick fix. or they just want someone to tell them. I watched a video just last week because I was looking at, I don't know why, a psychologist in Japan. And this girl uploads a video about her trip to a shrink in Japan. And she was like, it sucks here. The psychologists here are terrible. I went to the shrink and I was like, I'm having trouble meeting men in my dating life and this kind of thing. And he told me that I needed to lose weight. And I'm like, I think you're like, well, duh, bitch. You went to a shrink in Japan. He's like, you can't meet dudes? Well, you're fat.
We want everything but the truth, It's like, but I'm big boned. And well, but you're also eating a pizza and a cake every day.
I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
That's pretty. I remember when I went to the dentist or something in England. I guess it's pretty socialized medicine over there, and I was like almost appalled that they, as someone from the U.S. going like, well, I can't believe they weren't giving me some immediate bullshit solution and didn't try to sell me drugs. It was like, oh, it was some weird thing where I was having a toothache and then something with my ear or some shit. And then I went to but everything cost like $3. It was like nothing because it's coming out of their tax dollars, I guess. But I'm going like, the guy's just like, oh, just eat more, just eat lemon. Like, I'm like, what the fuck kind of doctor are you? But at the same time, a lot of times it's just like, are you like, getting out in the sun, eating vegetables and getting a little exercise? Because do that shit first and then get back to me,
scurvy or something?
Maybe. I don't know. I was with a 50-year-old Ukrainian chick. Who knows who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's just putting in the work. I mean, with the whole quarantine, man, I've packed on some weight. I need to get my butt in gear and eat right.
I'm a fat piece of shit right now. I'm so glad that you're booking bodybuilders and nutritionists so I can be shamed. And I've got to say, like the next day after Yuri, I went and like made a shake. I mean, I didn't do anything else, but it was a start. I did something. I drank fruit. I was like, well, it's something. Go outside,
get some sun for like 5 minutes before you burn up.
I've always been like ghostly white, and now during this pandemic, I mean, I see myself on these Zoom calls and stuff sometimes, especially if like the sun is coming in through the window. It's like, and I'm like, I look like fucking death. Like it's I just, man. Dude.
You have all the lights off because you just glow.
People are like, you okay? Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm like, I look like fucking death.
You look great on camera. Well, I turned all my lights off. It's just a natural glow because I'm so white.
Just put a picture of I'll put up a picture of me for these things from now on. That's like a photo of me 10 years ago. Okay. Damon, how long ago has it been since you blogged? I remember you actually, and maybe in the MySpace days, and you were blogging, and you actually were you in a documentary or some shit? You were a pretty renowned blogger there for a little while.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that documentary ever came to be. I forgot what it was. 2 fucking models that made it. So. You don't expect much.
That right now they're like 60-year-olds. Well, they're maybe not that old. They're like 45-year-olds on Instagram, like trying so hard to still be relevant.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I guess it's been a while now. I guess since I don't know since when was MySpace? Did MySpace die? Like 2008, 2010. It's been a
while. Yeah, I guess. So. Yeah, it really that really popped like. Big. That was the first, I mean, that was huge. That was such the life-changing thing for the world, I guess. And, but 3 years later, it was just done. Maybe in 2009, I remember I was one of those guys that super resisted it too. It was like, whatever, Facebook, MySpace is where it's at. And then like a year later, it was just a wasteland of viruses and garbage and
commercials.
It's just so fucked up. I don't know why Justin Timberlake bought that thing. I don't know what the fuck they're doing with it.
I logged into it a couple months ago, and I was like, I can't even fucking figure this out. And it's just a steady stream of like music commercials.
It's really
buy this band. That
maybe that's what it is. It's for maybe kids, the next generation. They're foreseeing the future, and it'll like people that can't think. Little drones get on there, and they're just like, I buy this now. That's what they do. They log in, and then it just tells them what to do.
For 13-year-old girls to know what to buy, I guess.
And then you ask a student like, so what music do you listen to? MySpace tells me.
No, I've been teaching online, and I have like an introduction thread, and I give them like 5 questions, and it's like, where are you from? What do you want to be when you grow up? And then I say, recommend one food place, and then give me one music video that you feel captures you, and know that I'm going to judge you on your response. But that way they all post some stuff, and a lot of it, sucks. I had a surprising amount of
That's how you find out the diamonds in the rough. You're like, holy shit, this motherfucker came out with this.
That's how I get like new music. I just put like I forced that to turn me on to music. I'm like, there's a couple cool like this one. They posted this band called Crumb the Band. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So I've been checking that out.
Is it like what kind of style is it?
It's a kind of and it's a rock band, but I would call it more like an alternative band, sort of a I don't know how to describe these things. It's kind of a real mellow. Trying to think of it like a Sneaker Pimpsy kind of.
Okay, cool, yeah. I hadn't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah. Well, check them out. Crumb the Band. I've only heard like 2 songs, but I liked them, so they could have it. It's this chick singing, and she has some kind of interesting melodies.
Would it be like? Would you equate it to maybe like the trip hop Portishead type stuff ish?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you ever hear Lovage? That's another one.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Well, me and I know that you know about my lifelong obsession with Mike Penn, but this has nothing less to do with that and more to do with Jennifer Charles. And like Victor's gonna have to like get up and go to the bathroom if I start talking to Jennifer Charles. But
is she the one
pretty
from
sexy
Lovage?
Voice. Yeah, I heard something about a new Lovage record a while back, and I don't know if that ever happened.
I think she did. Her and what was the other guy? Dan the Automator.
Dan the Automator.
They got together.
So they did another record.
No, they did a song.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
But that was it. But then she's got what's her other band? Elysian Fields, I think. Right.
Yeah.
I actually heard another band, Mongolian metal band called the Hue. HU.
Oh
yeah. And they use all these traditional Mongolian instruments, and it's pretty badass, actually.
There's another one called. What was it?
There was
called?
one that just toured. They played Come and Take It Live a year or two ago, and they have the Mongolian throat singing, but with a rock band, like a metal band.
It might have been them.
I just heard. Have you ever heard of this band, Damon? They're called, I don't know how to say it, like Halung or something, and they have the same kind of like that like sort of throaty didgeridoo almost sounding vocals, and it's kind of artsy, and I don't think it's metal, but I just heard of them recently.
I've heard some, like there's the Hue is a good one. There's another one called
I think you introduced me to
Eagle Fall. I think that's what it's.
You actually introduced me to Mongolian throat singing many years back. You sent me a video of a bunch of guys sitting in a canoe. I don't know. Dude, I actually tried that one time with a girl I worked with. Like I walked out and like this girl and the receptionist were doing this. I was like, what in the fuck's going on out here? Yeah, and they were doing it, and I figured, I mean, you'd have to practice it a lot, but I got it a couple of times where you sustain one pitch, and then you're able to implement another pitch over it, and you get good at it. It was pretty crazy, man. Like, yeah, you basically sing with yourself. You drone a pitch, and then you put other pitches.
You're harmonizing with yourself. Is essentially what you're doing.
Yeah. Huh? You're harmonizing your didgeridoo. You're a didgeridoo and a human voice all in one, and it just basically at the end of the day, it sounds like it's something that nobody but Damon would want to listen to.
Yeah, I'll listen to that shit. The weirder it is, though, I'm like, I want to check that out.
Check out this Korean pop video. Okay.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Well, I have a friend in Korea, and she sends me Korean metal, which it has some of the bands she likes are kind of cool. It's better than Japanese metal. Japanese metal is terrible. How so? It's just terrible. Like, look up like one of the most popular like heavy rock bands. There's called the Gazette. I think it's what it's called, Gazette or the Gazette.
It's just not great. And so I met this girl who was dating one of the guys. She'd been dating him for like 10 years, and she was like giving me this. Their whole relationship was like they had to keep it secret because they weren't allowed to have girlfriends and this kind of thing. And she was actually like a Spanish girl. And she was like, I'm kind of sick of this shit, and I'm going to break up with him. And I was like, well, who is it? She didn't want to tell me. And she's like, it's this guy, the bass player for the Gazette. And I looked at the band. I was like, oh my God, that's horrible. And I told her, hey, this band is horrible. You shouldn't be dating this guy anyway.
I mean, this right away.
Espantosa la música. You definitely get a new boyfriend, but you can't even marry him. You can't do anything. Yeah, get the fuck out of there.
Like, yeah, well, you're having to, like, yeah, maybe it's good you're dating him in secret because the band is terrible.
Yeah, but they're super popular in Japan, and I can't figure it out. Like, I don't get the attraction.
Well, have you ever heard of X Japan?
Ex-Japan, no.
That'll answer your Japanese metal questions right there. I've heard some ex-Japan stories that are.
Actually,
it's
though,
like imitating American rock bands in the worst way possible.
There's only one Japanese metal band that I like right now. Sure, there's other ones I would, but there's this band called Bandmade, and I've been trying to see them live in Japan, but they always sell out like 3 months before. But have you look up Bandmade? It's these metal girls. It's an all-girl band, and they all dress up like maids, and they're fucking.
All right, you know what? I'll check that out. I remember when you sent me the baby metal. Like a few different people have hit me up with baby metal, and I'm like,
it's not really good. It's just
I don't know. Yeah, I hadn't. But Bandmade. All right,
Bandmade is
you've got me curious.
Interesting lineup they got there.
Yeah.
Are you looking it up?
You got to give it to the Japanese for coming up with some fun, goofy shit.
Yeah,
I follow them on Facebook. They have some cool songs.
Well, I'll get back to you on that. I will check out Bandmade. Just based on the name.
Speaking of Japanese metal, didn't you tell me one time when you were at MI there were some Japanese students and they had the hardest time slowing down their speed?
Yeah, we had there was the joke that we had about we called it the Japanese blues. Because it was like a lot of it, not to say that, no one of Japan or Asian culture can play that style of music, but it was just funny because a lot of these guys I think were real technical, and they came from the Ingve kind of school and like the real dream theaters and these kind of, there was all this technical, sweepy, fast, tready, all this stuff, and then it's like when you want to just play something real, kind of a Texas flavor, just down in the dirt. They just couldn't do it, man. It's like bending. Well, it's funny too because there was I was talking about this with Guy the other day. We were like when we first met, we met in this little what they called an open counseling little jam session. I think it was before I even went there. I was like visiting, and it was just so badass. Like, man, every player in the room, the instructor was just off the charts, and I was just like, wow, I suck because I'm kind of playing pentatonic blues stuff. And I mean, I knew, some stuff I was okay, but these guys are way next level. Guys doing 8-finger tap. I mean, everyone's just doing this shit that's out of fucking this world. And there was this one guy who was just, we all knew like he was like this jazz beast. But man, when you kicked on the fucking distortion, you're like, yeah, let's just jam on a Dorian vamp. This guy was like a deer in headlights, man. He's like, oh, I don't know how to bend a string. It's really funny how stylistically you can really be really proficient in one thing and just suck balls at something else, like, cause it's such a feel thing and you're, same notes, but just absolutely different approach,
Well, they had a bit on that on the
Japanese metal or Japanese blues,
Metalocalypse, right? Where they went down to the South to learn how to play some old Delta blues, and they just kept doing all these arpeggio sweeps.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's it.
So the tied cinder blocks to their fingers where they play slower. That's what it reminded me of. I'm like, oh man.
I was the opposite. I was the guy that was like, well, I can bend a bunch of notes and I can't fucking play fast. I faked it for many years. Well, man, this has been fun.
Yeah.
Appreciate you chatting with us. And the first few podcasts we were really pretty exclusive on music. Of course, Yuri had a lot. So we did our initial one where we just kind of talked, it was kind of a getting to know us. We talked about our history. And then we had one with the guy from Brazil, Yuri, which was really fascinating to talk to him and inspiring. And my buddy Dave, do you remember Dave? From I've known forever and ever. He's from I met him in high school or junior high. You may have met him over the years at some point.
Maybe.
It's probably one of those things too, like maybe last year, because you've come to both of the Skunk Fest, right?
I think so.
Yeah, it's probably been one of those things like, oh, hey, this is my longtime friend, this is my longtime friend kind of thing.
Probably.
But anyway, we had just a silly podcast. It was really fun of just like, actually that airs tomorrow. It was ridiculous. And then the last two though have been cool because we've kind of gotten a little bit more into political stuff and current events and a little more, serious topic stuff. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk to you as a history professor and get your, point of view on this. So I guess you're not one of those quote progressives, huh?
No, not in any kind of modern sense. No.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of, I'm kind of checking out, man. So like I've spent a few months in Vietnam, and this is a communist country, right? I hang out with my wife's family. I love those motherfuckers. I just drink. Nobody gives a fuck. They don't argue about politics because there's no elections. So there's nobody to vote for.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, it's kind of nice. But I don't think I want to live under this system, but it's nice that people aren't fucking arguing about shit.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit about those things.
So
They're
that's
like, oh, the government sucks. Let's have another beer.
we've found out the silver lining to communism. So we don't have to argue about who to elect. It's just that if we do decide to argue about something, we'll get shot in the head. Is that it?
More or less. Well, and Vietnam's a little bit. Vietnam's a weird place, man. So like, as far as communist countries go,
Liberal communism.
no, it's more like slacker communism.
That's what I meant when I said liberal. Yeah, it's like slacker.
So like they tried.
Slacker commies.
They tried to do collectivization after in the 70s, and it basically fell apart within like 1 or 2 years just because nobody would do it. There's like, man, and then the government wouldn't enforce it, and then they're like, it's just total slackers. They're just like, no, we're not really, don't really care. Be communists. No. All right.
I feel like they would have just been worn down after this like about fucking endless war with this shit. They were just like, all right, we're communist. Just because you know what, just kind of play along a little bit and like let's. We're just tired
really
though.
Interesting. I was really surprised at Vietnamese culture. Like it's really interesting. It's totally worth going.
Yeah, well, man, keep me posted in future world travels. I really, fortunately for me, in the last few years, just was able to get out and do a little bit of touring, and it's just I love traveling, and it had been and I need to get abroad, and I've got a damn passport again, and yeah, it just sounds. I hope it can work out, man. You can go.
We should do that thing I told you I wanted to do in Vietnam. Like I told you, I'm gonna try to find some rock bands, just like talk to them, and just get into the local scene. And I wanted to do that. My fucking GoPro broke in fucking Germany, so I didn't have shit to record on it. But that would be like Vietnam was a place that's like China was 20 years ago. It's like people are starting to open up there. It's really fucking interesting there in Ho Chi Minh, and there's actually little Vietnamese rock clubs opening up, and nobody fucking goes there because the Vietnamese are just like, what is this fucking metal shit?
Huh.
And it's a super cool scene over there, man. It's totally different groove, man. We should totally go and just do a little film segment on here's some local rock bands.
Fuck yeah, dude. I'd love that. That sounds like a cool thing to do. We'll talk, like real fucking reality TV, not this goddamn bullshit reality TV, like real reality. Like, hey, we're going to go to Vietnam and show you some shit and learn some shit ourselves. Here's what we found out. Watch it on our YouTube channel. Or don't. Watch someone stick something up their butthole. Your choice. Maybe if we film some girls sticking, just watch our episode. We're going to talk about rock, but we got buttholes at the end, so keep watching.
Yeah, you can pay a cute Vietnamese girl to show you around and just get her on camera, or make it funny. Get a lady.
We'll do what, lady? Man, I'm down with whatever, man. Let's just go meet some people and do some cool stuff whenever we can leave our houses again. If that ever happens.
Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City is a fucking cool. It's a cool place, man. It's a happening place.
Rock and roll. All right, brother. I guess we could probably wrap up here. I feel like I was going to say something in the beginning, and I just dove in like we were like, "Hi, we're here with a," and not like, "Welcome to so and so." Thanks to our sponsors.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. I almost made a joke about the people that I keep mentioning. We've basically railed on a few companies and people, but all not. We need to give shout out to real things like Tragan guitars that I play. And what's a good company, Damon?
What's a good company? Oh,
anyone you want to plug here? Well, you plugged Vietnam. Your Damon gives a thumbs up to slacker communism.
Probably some Japanese cut. Samsung. I like Samsung because they preemptively pulled all their shit out of China.
That's fucking cool. Wow.
This place, that was 2 years ago. They're like, this place is fucked. So they got 98% of their production already out of China before the coronavirus hit or anything. They were
makes you wonder.
Not really.
They got that insider scoop. The slacker commies kind of came down through the grapevine, and they were like, "Oh, shit's about to hit the fan."
China's fucked up. China's a fucked up place right now, and they're getting worse.
Yeah,
that's why all the business is going to Vietnam. another reason why Vietnam's such a happening place right now.
Who would have thought? That's pretty interesting. But yeah. So anyway, we'll learn how to do all that stuff. And
I like true guitars. I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, dude, didn't you used to play? Did you played a Seagull, right?
Yeah, I still have the
Seagull.
Seagull.
Man, grab your Seagull. Where is that? Show that on camera, because you know, like I'm officially with that company now, right? I rep them like officially. Love it, man. The old school Seagull, and you had a Cutaway too. I think that might have been the same exact guitar I had that got goddamn stolen.
Yeah, it's been a great guitar, man.
Yeah, love Seagull. Godin guitars, Seagull guitars. Highly recommend. Bang for your buck. Been playing them for years and years and years. Love them.
Fuck yeah. And
what kind of strings are those? Ernie balls? Thought so. Huh? What else do I use, Vic? Let's start.
I wish I could pinpoint like a local music store, but they're all fucking closing, man.
Yeah, I was wondering. I think Guitar Center is doing some. Yeah, I think they're open right now, but I'm sure all the local businesses are just getting screwed so hard, man. It's so sad to see, and all these bars closing down. It's just, yeah, I do feel for that demographic a lot, man. It's really.
Every time a Guitar Center opens, like 5 local music stores.
No, that's always the case. Barnes and Noble, the local businesses just getting squashed all the time. So. Especially now, it's just a disaster. I think if this live music and rock and roll kind of scene wasn't hurting enough already. I mean, this pandemic has just devastated. I mean, it's small venues have shut down. Yeah. So it's like what was already bad is now worse. It's really unfortunate situation. But move on.
We're all depressed now.
I mean, I thought like earlier we were just like going like full on cynical, like narcissist
everywhere,
terrible horror. And then we kind of went on back on a high note and talked about, man, wow, when Vietnam is your high note. Hey, don't worry. We end the podcast with Vietnam. It's all good. It's all positive.
Vietnam, Ukraine, Japan.
Yeah. We talk about nothing but positive stuff. Riots, Ukraine, Vietnam.
Well, dude, I'm going to
midgets.
The plan is to go, I got to take the kid to Vietnam to meet the rest of the family.
Yeah.
She's like a celebrity in Vietnam already. Her whole fucking family calls to see the kid. It's good to have a little half-breed kid.
That's cool, man. I'm excited. You remember Suki from back in the day, man, Mm-hmm. She's in LA and been married for a few years now, and she's got a kid, and it's crazy, man. Just seeing, and my brother, I mean, everyone has kids now, and just seeing them growing up, it's wild, Pretty cool. So congrats on that, man. That's really awesome. I'm happy for you, dude.
Come to Vietnam with me. I'll fucking have you married in like a week.
Don't tell my girlfriend that. I might not get to go to Vietnam. She'll have to come too. Keep an eye on me. But I'm a lucky guy to have a very, very lovely young lady.
You're dating anybody right now?
Yeah, man, I am. She's she was here for a while when the pandemic hit. She got stuck here. Unfortunately, was able to work remote, so she was here for quite a while, for several months when she was supposed to be here for a weekend. It was awesome. But she is out in San Francisco, so we're kind of back and forth doing that whole thing. But yep, it's been cool, man. It's been cool. Met her, in the Ukraine.
Yeah,
through an agency, right?
Yeah, through an agency.
She didn't sing yet.
Yeah, she didn't sing yet.
The chick was pretty damn hot.
I'm sure she was. Well, yeah.
Well, if you have another topic, I would love to do this again. This was fun.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm having a blast doing this. It's so good it's a cool way of catching up with some people too. Great talking to you, dude. Wish you well. Really, really appreciated your insight on a lot of things too, man. I really think you nailed down some things and said it really well. Just describing our current landscape and culture and a lot of problems that we're having, and just the, coming from a place of history and being educated on that subject. Could definitely, I think, you're not just like, hey man, listen to what I have to say while I drink my 8th beer. You're like, it's like, no, dude, this motherfucker knows what he's talking about. He's well read and educated, and have actually you're not just coming out of books either. You've traveled the world, you've experienced these things firsthand and been to these places, and I think that's really fascinating and valuable. And it's one reason I wanted to talk to you, and also it's just, of course, good to catch up and I'm surprised how little we talked music in a way. I mean, we still talked about it, but just, I mean, all the variety. We'll have to do it again for sure, man. We'll get you back on here. Live from Vietnam next time.
Yeah. Next year.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for joining us, Italo Samano. And Vic,
hasta luego, placer.
Anything you want to add? You got a clever. We need a little sign off. I'm gonna let you take it. Go.
Hey, Jack. Yeah, thanks. That's it. Bye.
Cool. All right. Great.
You cut it out.
See you later.
Snip.
Adios.
Mucho gusto.
Mucho gusto.
Borracho.